Chapter 734. Obtaining a scroll. As the pursuit became more intense, the faster their speed was. The black-robed man tried everything to delay the time, but this was what Yi Shiwen could not tolerate. A stream of blood essence in him began to boil and burn. This was to temporarily improve his strength at the cost of burning blood essence. The average person would not do this casually, because the total amount of the blood essence in the human body was simply not enough. Who would simply waste them? But Yi Shiwen was different. He just obtained a lot of blood essence and energy from Star Beast. For him, it was nothing to consume of it. Even in a short time, he did not care. He didn't have that time to allow the black-robed man to enslave the Star Beast. After burning his blood essence, Yi Ziwen's speed had greatly improved in a short time. Although the duration of it would not be long, it was enough for him to catch up with the black-robed man who shuttled in space. Inverting the ocean seal. Yi Shiwen screamed, and a pair of golden wings flapped behind him. His figure rushed to the back of Black-Robe's man. Yi Ziwen's speed was innately faster than the black-robed man. It was just that the black-robed man's spatial ability was troublesome. Yi Shiwen was now like a fisherman. He kept protruding big hands on the surface of the water, trying to catch the fish that freely swam in the water. The black-robed man was the fish. It would be difficult to catch. Or more precisely, it was simply impossible to grasp it. So Yi Shiwen adopted drastic measures to set up the black-robed man, which was to directly shatter the space. After Yi Shiwen caught up with the black-robed man, he formed a huge ocean directly in the sky, turned into an ocean blue seal, and bombarded it on the black-robed man. The black-robed man had no idea that Yi Shiwen had suddenly improved his strength further, and the speed was suddenly increased to a great height. Although it only lasted for a while, it was substantial to be fatal and enough to make a difference. Yi Shiwen would be able to deliver a fatal blow during that short window. In the previous pursuit, the black robe lacked such a chance, so he failed in the end. Bang! The black-robed man didn't have time to react and was hit. Although inverting the ocean seal was not as strong as the rippling mountain seal, water had the distinction of running water and flood. Who dared to say that the flood was not strong enough? His body seemed to be broken apart at once. There was a big hole at the black robe. It was badly mutilated with blood splashed out. The white bones were vaguely visible. The black-robed man was almost dead. Although he was not dead, it was obviously fatal. He was seriously injured, and his body flew out directly. However, that also won a little time for him. The black-robed man had blood on the corners of his mouth, and his eyes were as fierce as a wolf. He looked at Yi Shiwen with a ruthless heart. As long as he enslaved the Star Beast as a slave, he would definitely settle the score with Yi Shiwen. Although Yi Shiwen couldn't see his expression and couldn't read his thoughts, Yi Shiwen knew the black-robed man wouldn't give mercy later, so he quickly rushed in for the kill. Since the black-robed man was injured, his speed was far from being comparable to his initial one. Even if Yi Ziwen's impact force made him fly out a short distance, there was no way to stop Yi Ziwen's pursuit. It's over! Yi Ziwen's tone was cold, without any sympathy. Facing such a madman who wanted to destroy the world, any means were needed. Every pore in Yi Ziwen's body was bursting with sword aura. Sword aura condensed into a long sword in the void, and it suddenly slashed downward. The vast sky was seemingly halved. Thwack! The black-robed man was frightened and wanted to dodge away. Despite him mustering all his spatial ability could do, he still couldn't completely avoid it. Moreover, Yi Shiwen dismembered the entire left arm completely. Even the entire half of the body was bloody due to the influence of Yi Shiwen's sword aura, almost to the point of decay. Yi Ziwen's sword aura was so overbearing that he almost chopped off half of his body. Ah! The black-robed man screamed and burned his blood essence fanatically. However, instead of attacking Yi Shiwen, he fled. He chanted an ancient and inconceivable spell. A space door appeared in front of him. This summon would have a certain amount of repercussion. With that, he rushed in the space door with no hesitation, disappearing without a trace. This happened too suddenly. Yi Shiwen had no time to react and was too late. It was not because he was too slow to sense the spatial ability. However, in front of this natural spatial ability user, Yi Zaiwen's improvement in the perception of space due to cultivation upgrade was still lacking. This was a gap that talent brought upon. It would be difficult to make up. However, Yi Shiwen only had a little regret. He had already achieved an extraordinary feat if the Star Beast did not transmit a lot of blood essence and energy to him at the most critical time. Attacking the black-robed man was simply a suicide attempt. Right now, he did not only survive but delivered a fatal blow to the black-robed man. It was already a surprise. Naturally, he was overjoyed. After the breakthrough to half-step transcendent realm, he was still balanced in both offense and defense. Even if he encountered a transcendent realm, he still had a fighting chance. Looking at the scroll, the spirit beast's spirit was drawn out bit by bit. Yi Shiwen waited quietly. What are you waiting for? Destroy the scroll. The star beast saw Yi Shiwen fend off the black robe and quickly shouted. What he was most afraid of was that the spirit was drawn out and became a slave to others. He would rather die than getting into this state. Destroy it? Why should I destroy it? Yi Shiwen smiled coldly at the corner of his mouth. When he looked at this star beast, he didn't hide his killing intentions. He almost suffered 2 bitter losses in front of this monster, making him hate this star beast. Do you think I don't know what you want to do? You want me to die along with him and take advantage of the situation, said Yi Shiwen. It's whimsical and delusional. I want to see how you will end up in the end. How do you know? Star Beast finally understood that Yi Shiwen had seen through its strategy. No wonder Yi Shiwen was not willing to help him destroy the scroll. I knew it from the beginning. I feigned obedience to obtain the help of your blood essence and energy, said Yi Shiwen faintly. Human, you are despicable. Star Beast roared, his roar almost rippling across the sealed site. Many star beasts around heard the roar of the patriarch, and they could not help but shudder. Vile? How can I compare with you? Yi Shiwen smiled, but he was scolding in his heart. This star beast had lived countless years. Even if it was a fraction of their lifespan would be more than his. If someone was really deceived by this huge monster's appearance, thinking it was merely a no-brainer beast, then it would be a big mistake. It was sly like a fox. If it wasn't for Yi Zaiwen's fruitful adventure and various coincidences, he had already suffered a loss in the hands of such an old creature. Even so, he did suffer a big loss. The demon seed nurtured in his body. Hence, he would be really cautious around this ancient creature. Star Beast was suddenly stunned. Of course, it wouldn't think that if it didn't want to conspire against Yi Shiwen, it wouldn't end up like this. It would only be depressed and unwilling. It never thought that Yi Shiwen could break his conspiracy in such a short period of time. This was where he miscalculated and where he was finally overturned by Yi Shiwen. You don't need to struggle anymore. I want to see the magic in these scroll, said Yi Shiwen. He knew the scroll only absorbed part of the star beast spirit. The most important thing was that the process could only be completed after the sacrifice at the later stage and various complicated processes. The black-robed man had fled, thus the scroll would fail. Yi Shiwen closed his eyes and began to consolidate the half-step transcendent realm he just broke into. Although it was a quick fix, it was the star beast avatar breakthrough but not the main body. It could still provide some experience for the main body. Even if Star Beast kept screaming outside, Yi Shiwen wouldn't open his eyes at all. He knew exactly what he was doing. It was about another hour or so. With Star Beast's painful scream, a single strand of its spirit was sealed into the scroll. The scroll suddenly burst into a powerful light, illuminating the whole sky. In the light, countless talisman texts dissipated in it. It was very similar to the ancient talisman essays exuded by the black-robed man just now. Suddenly, a space door appeared in the sky, and the scroll plunged into the space door. A big hand in the sky suddenly swooshed down, and the space door was directly extinguished. With the space shattered again, the scroll fell directly into the big hand. The owner of the big hand was definitely Yi Shiwen. In Yi Zaiwen's hands, the scroll was struggling frantically. The countless talisman texts above were starting to burn, mustering all it could to break free from Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen would not let it escape. He snorted directly, and sent endless waves of spiritual sense to eliminate all the resistance coming from the scroll. Chapter 735. Chaotic world plunged in the flames of war. Although Yi Zaiwen's accomplishments in space ability were far from being comparable to that of the black-robed man, he had also entered the half-step transcendent realm anyway. It was more than enough to smother the revolt of a scroll. Falling into the hands of Yi Shiwen and wanting him to hand it over? That was simply impossible. Yi Shiwen spread out the scrolls and saw simple ornaments everywhere on the scroll. Yi Shiwen didn't know how many years ago that style was. It revealed a mysterious air. If Yi Mo was here, he would most likely notice some clues. If it was just Yi Shiwen himself, it would be far worse. His strength might be enough, but his insight wasn't. No matter who you are, from today on, Southern Dipper swears to fight till the end with you. Suddenly, in the scrolls, a sharp spiritual sense akin to a sword suddenly plunged into Yi Zaiwen's mind. It went through Yi Zaiwen's spiritual sea. This spiritual sense was like a hot knife cutting through butter. It easily broke through all the defenses in Yi Shiwen. In the face of it, Yi Shiwen was as fragile as paper. In the spiritual sea, Yi Shiwen showed his influence and quickly mobilized the endless divinity to form layers of defense and shields. After breaking through the walls composed of hundreds of divinity, the fine sword finally disappeared. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but get a cold sweat and took a breath. He didn't understand where this fine spiritual sword was. The sword was probably just a piece of transcendent realm spirit. After all, it was very common to attach spirit to magic tools. Even Yi Shiwen wondered whether this spirit was from the legendary Southern Dipper constellation Emperor. Although he had not encountered the Southern Dipper constellation Emperor, he could speculate Big Dipper's strength and the strength of Big Dipper constellation Emperor with his knowledge on the strength of many constellation lords. Similarly, it applied to Southern Dipper, who had fought against Big Dipper for many years. It must be a terrifying transcendent realm master. The situation just now was seemingly an imminent peril. If it was an average person, the spiritual sea would be torn apart, resulting in the victim to become a fool. It was at this time that Yi Shiwen really understood the horror of a transcendent realm master. It was not as simple as what he had guessed when he was in the Great Sage realm. This realm was named after transcendent, which meant transcended sentient beings. It was not the ultimate realm, but in the eyes of the many warriors, it was already the same as the legendary deities. It was really thrilling just now. For the threats, Yi Shiwen didn't take it seriously. He wasn't scared. Not to mention that Yi Shiwen had Big Dipper as his backer, an organization that could compete with Southern Dipper for many years. True martial school were not cowards too. Southern Dipper was dangerous, but not so terrifying. Yi Shiwen just collected the scroll since it should have great use. After all, the Southern Dipper's man could rely on the scrolls to harvest Star Beast's spirit, thus domesticating the Star Beast into an obedient slave. It was probable for Yi Shiwen too. Even though Yi Shiwen didn't know the next step, he felt that he would be able to know one day sooner or later as he kept the scroll. By that time, with a Star Beast as a slave, he could really become one of the top experts under the stars at once. So he just sat idle and let the scroll extract Star Beast's spirit. Star Beast on the side witnessed the scene. What a pity! He was a sly fox. Of course, he understood what happened to Yi Shiwen in a glance. He wanted Yi Shiwen to suffer a loss during the fight with the black-robed man. He also hoped that the spiritual attack could turn Yi Shiwen into a fool. He did not expect that it would fail, and made him happy for nothing. This time, the Star Beast was really depressed. God is unfair. Star Beast growled secretly. After safekeeping the scrolls, Yi Shiwen didn't even look at this Star Beast, and went straight to the sealed site. He shouldn't meddle in this matter anymore. It was best to report to the top of the true martial school, and let them decide. The best solution was to send a transcendent realm master to safeguard the base. If Southern Dipper came again, most likely it would be transcendent realm masters. Such a master was not something that Yi Shiwen could deal with. However, this was just a guess. In his view, without these scrolls, Southern Dipper would not easily conquer Star Beast. Otherwise, they would long make a move in these many years. As a matter of fact, there would be no problem to enslave an average Star Beast. However, This star beast was obviously superior in strength. Even if it was sealed, it was far more powerful than ordinary people. Certain special props must be used. Otherwise, it was impossible for the black-robed man alone to get the star beast. After the scrolls were taken away by Yi Shiwen, he must have disrupted their arrangements. In a short period of time, the Southern Dipper probably wouldn't make any move. However, it was better off for Yi Shiwen to let the top level of true martial school decide on this matter. After all, Yi Shiwen couldn't know for sure. Currently, Yi Ziwen's avatar's first task was to find the main body. Only in Tianyuan Mirror could he quietly cultivate and consolidate his current cultivation. Moreover, he needed to suppress so much blood essence that he cheated from Star Beast. It was better to let Tianyuan Mirror suppress it, which could liberate his efforts into putting more fighting power. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen flew straight towards the direction of True Martial School, and he had to report this matter to the top of the school. On the other side, Yi Ziwen's main body also had a long flight and flew into the Great Yu Empire. What was Yi Ziwen's speed now? He had already attained the Great Sage Realm. His strength was not the same as when he started. Yi Shiwen spread his wing, and he could go wherever. However, toward the direction of True Martial School, Yi Shiwen could see smoke everywhere and a chaotic scene everywhere. It was like the end of the world. Although the entire main battlefield was at True Martial School, many masters collectively made their move in the south region. Although they no longer directly affect the nearby area, the entire ground was shaken due to the war. Many people were affected, houses collapsed, and various demonic beasts were stimulated by the violent fluctuations of the world's energy. The demonic beasts went downhill one after another, causing great danger. Every place had warriors of the south region sporadically hunting these demonic beasts, or the great empire of the south wilderness was organizing the army to collectively put down some experts who took advantage of the opportunity to stir up troubles. All in all, this was basically a scene of chaos. Countless people were shivering in fear in this terrible change. Originally under the rule of True Martial School, the south region was not completely peaceful. There were still some contradictions and frictions among the major empires. However, the overall situation was still manageable. True Martial School would never allow the overall situation to be greatly ruined and destroyed. But now, after losing control, the entire south region was chaotic. Countless orders suddenly collapsed. The farther away from the True Martial School, the more so it was. In many places where the emperor was far away, many warriors took advantage of the chaos. Many mischievous organizations were wreaking havoc too. Yi Shiwen continued the cleanse as he moved forward. His speed was really fast, his fighting power was strong. Even Great Sage Peak were not his opponents. No matter if it was those warriors who stirred up chaos or demonic beasts, Yi Shiwen reaped their lives before they had any chance to escape. In such a chaotic time, all the rules in the normal days had collapsed. To reorganize the rules, Yi Shiwen decided to use killing as a means to instill fear in these mischievous people. Not only was he doing this, but also some scattered True Martial School disciples were doing it. They organized rescue operations and eradicated rebellious organizations. After all, the South region was the foundation of True Martial School. It could even be said that the South region's prosperity had a direct relationship with their True Martial School. Although many people looked down on these minute ants usually, they understood that they also absorbed many talents from these ants. The number of talents at True Martial School was actually related to these civilians. If these civilians were slaughtered, True Martial School had sustained a serious injury even if they really won the war. It would take a long time to recuperate. At this time, Emergent School didn't send many people to stop Yi Shiwen and the others. They just increased the intensity of attacking True Martial School. As long as they captured True Martial School and killed those who resisted, the disciples of True Martial School who were outside were nothing at all. These disciples would have no way to stir up any resistance. As for those civilians, Emergent School would rule them in the future. Naturally, Emergent School would not go for mass slaughter. What really angered Yi Shiwen was that a large number of barbarians took advantage of the chaos and actually invaded the South region. In the True Martial domain, they were divided into 5 regions and 4 wildernesses. Below the south region, there was South Wilderness. Many barbarians lived among them, accompanied by birds and beasts, and were very barbaric. Their ancestors retreated into the southern wilderness after failing to compete with the ancestors of the South Region clan. Due to the poor life condition in the southern wasteland, the ancestors of the South Region clan did not pursue, letting them rest and recuperate in it, and slowly became a South Barbarian clan. The relationship between the South Region and the South Wilderness could be described as terrible. The barbarians in the South Wilderness want to get out of the South Wilderness from generation to generation and enter the more fertile South Region to seize large areas of land. The barbarians had fought for countless years. It was a history filled with blood and tears. Originally, there was an emergent school in the South Region. No one dared to have a second idea. However, as emergent school invaded True Martial School in an all-round way, True Martial School was too busy to take care of itself. Not to mention the entire South Region, there were many forces in South Wilderness beginning to stir. Chapter 736, Raging Fury. Especially among the many South Barbarian tribes, there were armored horsemen all over the place, and they pillaged everywhere. The masters in the barbarian clan had also begun to march into the South Region. The barbarians would not care less about the outcome of this war. Even if True Martial School won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. True Martial School would have no strength to stop them from plundering the South Region. If Emergent School won, the situation would be tough for the barbarian clan. They would face a stronger neighbor, so it would be better to take initiative and seize territories now. With that, they would have bargaining chips. Yi Shiwen gazed to a distance. A group of barbarian clan warriors was chasing down a group of South Region warriors. These barbarian clan warriors were all dressed in animal skins, a full-fledged typical appearance in barbarian wildness. Each of them was tall and mighty. Their body exuded a formidable aura unlike the warriors in the South Region. These South Barbarian warriors had survived through the perennial fighting after all. Their living conditions were 10,000 times worse than the people in the South Region. They had to fight for living space with many demonic beasts every day, which also made them very powerful. As far as the overall quality concerned, the South Barbarian was even stronger than the South Region's masters. It was difficult for ordinary warriors in the same rank to fight against them one-on-one. However, the only thing that restricted them was their small population because they had to compete with many demonic beasts for living space all year round. Hence, many of their members had already died in battle before they reached adulthood, and they couldn't develop much further. Therefore, their population was relatively small. Hence, they were far from able to compete with the South Region masters. In the end, they were firmly suppressed in the South Wilderness for hundreds or thousands of years. Right now, many True Martial School's masters in the South Region were in a war against the Emergent School's masters. They could even take care of themselves. Hence, it was the best timing for the barbarians to carry out their evil deeds. Each of the barbarian clan warriors in the sky was extremely powerful. They had tough-looking bone or bronze weapons in their hands. Each of their swings made the space shake violently. These barbarians were suppressed by the South Region for many years with their civilization having no way to leap forward. However, they had different ways to go about things. These bone weapons were most likely extracted from demon beasts. They were really sturdy. Damn these barbarians. In Yi Ziwen's eyes, the barbarian clans who had close contact with demonic beasts all the time had fallen into thinking like wild beasts. They were cruel and violent. Yi Shiwen reaped the lives of these South Barbarian masters who took advantage of the chaos in their invasion with no mercy. Yi Shiwen had come all the way to the border of the Daming Kingdom, which was very close to the Great Yu Empire. However, this very prosperous kingdom in the past was long gone. The ancient road that would be opened once every 100 years was also completely plunged into the flames of war. Many barbarian clan armored horsemen were plundering and killing in various villages. Run. Everyone runs. Once we escape back to True Martial School, we will be safe. Yi Shiwen appeared in front of a group of a dozen disciples. None of them were average civilians. All of them are Sage Realm level masters from the Enforcement Hall. The elite disciples in Law Enforcement Hall were sent out at this time to extinguish the chaotic wars in the South region and to eliminate the organizations that made the chaos. Law Enforcement Hall was the nemesis of the barbarian clan. Hence, a large number of Law Enforcement Hall masters were sent to execute these barbarian plunderers. A team of Sage Realm masters was considered powerful in this chaotic world. But now, they were completely panic-stricken and chased down. Behind them was an order composed of thousands of barbarian clan armored horsemen. All of them were the elite. The weakest among them would be legendary. The leading 100 armored horsemen were Sage Realm masters. The leader was a great sage with a stubble beard. When such an elite force was placed in any tribe in the southern wilderness, they could be regarded as the rank of the Imperial Guard. This elite force actually turned out in full strength in this place. In the face of this once-in-lifetime opportunity, the infighting between the South Barbarian, which was so common, disappeared all at once. Many among them suddenly put down their hatred for each other and took advantage of this opportunity to seize the fertile lands in the South region. All of it was for the tribe to compete for better living conditions. Escape to true martial school. What a joke! Now that true martial school can't protect itself, you better surrender. Otherwise, I won't show mercy. The great sage with stubble beard laughed loudly. He was quite rampant as he did not take true martial school, which was currently in the midst of war, into his eye. Would the group of true martial school's disciples dare to stop? If they dared to stop at this time, wouldn't they be courting death? The great sage with a stubble beard sneered, seemingly blaming these people for not following his command. The barbarian's mount was an elephant-like beast. It was tamed by him and became his good helper. The barbaric beast had already entered the great sage, and its combat effectiveness was very strong. However, with just a long roar, its very long nose was stretched out at once, reaching hundreds of feet. It directly took the last two Law Enforcement Hall female disciples who fled. In the face of the great sage-level barbaric elephant, these two female disciples who were already Sage Realm did not have any means of resistance. They were almost suffocated to death during the process. In the blink of an eye, they immediately fell into the hands of the great sage with a stubble beard. In an instant, their clothes were stripped. The great sage with a stubble beard raped them on the spot. The scene was barbaric and cruel. In the duration of a dozen breaths, the two Sage Realm female disciples had all their Yin energy extracted and died on the spot. As a matter of fact, although the martial arts did have erotic desire, the erotic desire was not very attractive to most of the martial arts as compared with the long journey in pursuing martial Dao. Some of them were even repulsive to it. The general choice was only dual cultivation, so it had evolved into various dual cultivation martial techniques. Some of them were quite ruthless as it would extract all the essence and chi from the other's body. This great sage obviously used one of those techniques. At this time, he was smiling proudly in the sky. The barbarian armored horseman behind him also laughed out loud. Such cruel scene for them was nothing at all. At this time, Yi Shiwen finally realized that it was not that the barbarians could not catch up with this Law Enforcement Hall team, but that they were simply toying with them. The barbarian group let them flee first. Then, they would hunt them down one by one. It was just like how a cat will toy with a mouse before eating them. Yi Shiwen was raging in fury in that instant. Although he didn't have a good relationship with Law Enforcement Hall's disciples, the Law Enforcement Hall's disciples were still part of true martial school after all. Seeing them being abused by the enemy, Yi Shiwen definitely would be angered. These barbarians were sentenced to death in Yi Ziwen's mind. Yi Shiwen gazed at the Law Enforcement Hall disciples. Their faces turned sour as they trembled on the spot. They were too angered. How could they not know that they were just a group of rats being toyed by cats? However, they had no other way. After all, their strength was worse than the opponent. You guys don't know your limits. True martial school will never let you go. You all go to hell. A Law Enforcement Hall's disciples shouted angrily. Let us go? Now it's not whether you want to let us go, but the true martial school can't even protect itself. How terrifying is the emergent school outside this region? You don't have any chance of winning. Are you being delusional that the true martial school is at its peak? The great sage laughed dismissively. In the eyes of these bystanders, true martial school was already dead. There could be no accidents at all. True martial school was indeed powerful, and they were even terrified of it. If true martial school was still usually strong, these barbarians definitely would not dare to get involved in the South region. This would void the contract signed between South region and South Wilderness for countless years. Small-scale looting could be overlooked and forgiven. However, once they had large-scale invasion, they put true martial school as their enemy. Then, they would need to bear true martial school's thunderous wrath. But now, the true martial school could not even protect itself. Under the attack of emergent school, the destruction of true martial school seemed imminent. After all, the current true martial school was not the true martial school in the past. It was far weaker than the previous one. Of course, if it was the former true martial school, then emergent school certainly did not have the guts to detonate the war between these two superb forces. Fight with them, since we are going to die anyway. It is better for us to fight vigorously. Our law enforcement hall's disciples are not cowards. A male disciple of law enforcement hall suddenly shouted. He could not bear to be treated like a mouse, getting toyed. He roared all of a sudden, rushing towards the barbarian armored horseman. Don't overrate yourself and do something impossible. The great sage with a stubble beard sneered. There was a bone rod from an unknown demonic beast in his hand. It was more than 3 meters long, like a long spear, dancing like a dragon in his hand. Suddenly, it swooshed down quickly and ruthlessly. Boom! The law enforcement hall's disciple was totally unmatched. He was directly smashed into a ball of minced meat on the spot. Stop! A furious voice came from a distance. A blue shadow rushed in like a thunder. Chapter 737. Rescue? How dare you? Yi Shiwen flew over from a distance, turned into a golden light, and rushed in. Senior Brother Yi. The law enforcement hall's disciples noticed that the savior turned out to be Yi Shiwen. They addressed Senior Brother Yi in difficulty. The relationship between them and Yi Shiwen was not great, but simply terrible. The group consisted Sage Realm Masters, considered middle-level elite in the law enforcement hall. Yi Shiwen knew these people very well. No one could say how their hatred started, but there was lots of bad blood. So after seeing the person who turned out to be Yi Shiwen, their faces were a little weird. From the standpoint of true martial school, they were naturally brothers. But in terms of law enforcement hall, Yi Shiwen wasn't really their ally. But even so, they did not dare to speak out in disrespect. After all, Yi Shiwen showed much better strength than them, regardless of whether there was an element of luck in defeating Mu Shengjie. Yi Ziwen's great sage level strength was enough to convince them as a senior. Besides, Yi Shiwen was here to rescue them. The feelings surged in their minds could only be explained by this word, tangled. The group simply did not know what to do. But the gratitude still overwhelmed all emotions at the current moment. Who are you? How dare you intervene in my matters? The great sage with a stubble beard saw Yi Shiwen appear and immediately became hostile at Yi Shiwen with some hints of ridicule. Someone to kill you. South barbarians are indeed really brave. You all dared to take advantage of this time to invade the north, then you all shall die. Yi Shiwen sneered and suddenly roared. His roar consisted of many swords chi. Soon, Yi Ziwen's sword chi filled up the air. Swoosh! 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 With a sharp screech, these swords had instantly cut through the vast sky. Puff! 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 With the sound of a sonic bomb, all the South barbarian masters who were arrogant just now were all blown into a blood mist by sword chi. Their strength was far too inferior as compared to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, who had stepped into Great Sage Realm, would not put both Legendary or Sage Realm in his eyes. Roar! The Great Sage Master with a stubble beard saw Yi Shiwen kill all of his men in an instant. He glared at Yi Shiwen immediately with a resolute intention to mince Yi Shiwen into pieces. On the other hand, the law enforcement hall's disciples stared at the scene before them in a daze. They couldn't believe the scene before them because they were so horrible. Of course, they knew the power of the South barbarian warriors. Aside from the absolute advantage in numbers, the law enforcement hall's disciples might not win even in a one-on-one battle. Although they were all elites in true martial school and outstanding people in the same rank, there was no doubt that the South Barbarian was not really weaker. If these South Barbarian warriors were sent out this time, they would definitely be the elites among the elites. Hence, they were very challenging opponents. The pursuit just now was not because the law enforcement hall disciples were capable of escape, but they were toyed around. Otherwise, they would be long killed already. But Yi Shiwen managed to eradicate these people and turn them into clusters of blood mist under the law enforcement hall's disciples' witness. It was indeed a terrifying scene. Except for the great sage who exuded many qis to protect himself, the others were simply unmatched Yi Zaiwen's sword qi and were directly slashed to death. The originally suppressed Yi Zaiwen's aura also burst out in all directions. The great sage realm qi swept out like a storm. Did he really step into the great sage realm? The disciples of law enforcement hall stared at the scene before them. It was unbelievable. Although Yi Shiwen had defeated Mu Xingjie previously, many people still felt that he might have used a secret technique. His own strength was nothing but a half-step great sage. When Yi Shiwen really stepped into the great sage, the disciples of law enforcement hall were surprised. Yi Shiwen didn't stay in true martial school for more than 100 years, right? Although they did not count it carefully, it certainly did not. In less than 100 years, Yi Shiwen had escalated to the great sage realm, making these self-proclaimed elites feel inferior. Did we all waste our time? Isn't that an indisputable fact? Compared with Yi Zaiwen's miraculous speed, their training progress could really be described as in vain. But they quickly calmed down again. They naturally understood that it was unwise to compare to others in this manner. There were various geniuses in the world. Compared with these monstrous geniuses, they were nothing. Damn you. Go to hell. The great sage with a stubble beard lost his judgment after getting enraged by Yi Shiwen. After all, Yi Shiwen already proved that he was also a great sage after exuding his qi. However, Yi Shiwen was still a great sage initial. Compared with the great sage late on the South Barbarian side, the gap was still fairly big. He didn't put Yi Shiwen in his eyes but just felt that Yi Shiwen was just courting death. 100 Barbarians Lurin finger. He directly launched a finger attack that swooshed from the sky. The finger tapped onto the empty air and the attack struck Yi Shiwen. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen directly. The great sage late was an elite originated from the South Barbarian clan's 100 Barbarians cave. Taking advantage of the chaos in the South region this time, he directly rushed out from southern wilderness but encountered Yi Shiwen here. Yi Shiwen sneered. He was still annoyed with the pursuit he suffered from a South Barbarian great sage last time. He was hunted and forced to retreat all the way back to true martial school from southern wilderness. Although these South Barbarians were divided into many forces, Yi Shiwen felt no difference in mind. They were all from the same barbarian clan with no difference. Immediately, Yi Shiwen punched out directly and turned the surrounding scene into a universe void. He was the only real body in the universe. The stars seemingly listened to Yi Zaiwen's command and bombarded 100 Barbarians Lurin finger. Boom! With a huge roar, terrible power swept through it, shattered countless mountains directly. The great sage with a stubble beard screamed in pain. His entire arm was badly mangled. Yi Zaiwen's power was terrible despite the current attack originating from his main body but not the Star Beast avatar. No matter what, this great sage with a stubble beard was not that extremely powerful black-robed man. This great sage barbarian with a stubble beard was nothing in front of the half-step transcendent realm black-robed man. The two sides were not at the same level. The entire arm of the great sage barbarian was almost shocked by Yi Zaiwen's attack into a blood mist, almost killed on the spot. He was still seriously injured by that huge shock, and his eyes had hints of trepidation. He couldn't believe that Yi Shiwen was nothing more than a great sage initial. How could Yi Shiwen cause such great damage to him? Most importantly, he was already the elite from the barbarian clan. The superb physical body of the barbarian clans was well known. On the other hand, Yi Shiwen showed terrible physical cultivation in this attack, which had terrified him the most. However, Yi Shiwen did not give him the great sage barbarian any opportunity to stay in panic. He directly chased in to kill the great sage barbarian. The great sage barbarian did not have the spatial ability like the black-robed man. He had no time to respond to the unpredictable speed of Yi Ziwen's main body. Bang! Yi Shiwen directly bombarded his physical body and harvested all his wealth into the Tianyuan mirror. It was seemingly hundreds millions of elixir. For the current for Yi Shiwen, it wasn't much. After beheading the great sage from the South Barbarian clan, Yi Shiwen turned to the disciples of Law Enforcement Hall. At this time, he didn't have any intention to continue to care about his previous grudges. He merely spoke faintly, "South Barbarians' invasions are everywhere. Quickly retreat it. You're unmatched to stop them." The disciples of Law Enforcement Hall looked at Yi Shiwen in conflict. Although Yi Shiwen spoke bluntly, he was right. This was indeed not a situation they could stop. In the face of South Barbarians' great sage, the so-called elites or geniuses were only a little better than the average person, and it did not amount to anything at all. They could only watch their sisters in Law Enforcement Hall being raped by the South Barbarian great sage. If it weren't for Yi Ziwen's timely arrival, they would have already died in the hands of that great sage. Although they were still escaping, they also knew that if no miracle happened, they would not be able to escape from the great sage with a stubble beard. How long would it take for a great sage realm to kill some sage realm warriors? It could be done in one breath. This was how the great sage realm suppressed the sage realm. Their very reason for the constant escape was to wait for such a miracle to happen. They were hoping there would be a master of true martial school passing by to save them. Now the miracle finally happened, but it was Yi Shiwen who they had looked down upon previously. "No matter what, I would like to thank Brother Yi for saving my life today." A Law Enforcement Hall's disciple stepped forward and seemed to be the leader of these disciples. "You're welcome. It's my responsibility," Yi Shiwen said lightly and did not take this matter seriously. These Sage Realm warriors were not worthy to be his concerns at this time. "I wonder if Brother Yi is heading towards the Great Yu Empire." The disciple probed. Yi Ziwen's origin and background were not a secret in true martial school. After all, such a legendary character, how could true martial school nurture him without a thorough investigation of his origin and background? Yi Shiwen nodded. It was not to his surprise. Chapter 738, Divine Legion Reappearance. "Brother Yi, you should hurry," said the disciple. "What do you mean?" Yi Ziwen's eyes suddenly glinted. He couldn't help but get nervous when the Great Yu Empire was mentioned because his relatives and friends were all over there. He couldn't ignore them. Several of us were originally dispatched to guard the 10 countries in the Eastern South region to fight against the various malicious organizations that emerged. However, we were driven out at that time, and we met this savage barbarian on the road. When the disciple mentioned the great sage barbarian with a stubble beard, his face was also filled with indignation and hatred as though he wanted to swallow the barbarian's bones. "Who driven you out?" Yi Shiwen immediately asked, knowing that although the elite team of Law Enforcement Hall disciples was nothing in his eyes, it was arguably the most top-notch force among the 10 countries in the Southeast region. Last time, Emergent School sent a great sage to stir up troubles in the 10 countries of the Southeast region. From the fact that he almost unified the 10 countries of the Southeast region, it was apparent that the entire Southeast region was remote. Secondly, a sage realm master could dominate a place. Not even a great sage was needed. In that place, someone could drive out the disciples of Law Enforcement Hall. It was conceivable how strong the opponent was. We don't know, but they are a group of very terrifying masters under Divine's banner. They swept all the way to the Southeast region. Now they probably had entered the territory of the Great Yu Empire. All the sects were uprooted despite having the presence of great sage in the sections. We thought we were unmatched, so we planned to return to the school and ask the senior leaders for help. The disciple replied. "Divine?" Yi Shiwen frowned. He could not think of any organization under the banner of Divine. The only thing related to this was the Divine Legion. When Yi Shiwen thought of this organization, Yi Shiwen felt nervous. If it was the Divine Legion, then it would be really terrible. The grudge between him and the Divine Legion could be traced all the way when Yi Shiwen stepped on the ancient road and continued into the true martial school. The Divine Legion was mysterious and unpredictable. Aside from the first Divine Lord, all the Divine Lords up until the fifth were all eliminated in his hands. Even a page of God's scripture was in his hands. Because these leaders were defeated one after another, and as the status of Yi Shiwen continued to rise, the lives of these Divine Legion in the true martial school were becoming more and more difficult. Although many people disliked Yi Shiwen, there were many who favored Yi Shiwen too. They hoped to build a connection with Tibetan Star Summit via Yi Shiwen. Therefore, after being boycotted severely, the Divine Legion had fallen apart. Even if there were former members, they absolutely dared not to do things so brazenly under the Divine banner. Yi Shiwen knew about the Divine Legion situation, but he didn't stop it. He was even happy to let it happen. The grudge between him and the Divine Legion was already a bloody feud. After all, Yi Shiwen had slaughtered 4 out of 5 Divine Lords in total. The existence of such forces was a hidden danger for him. Even if the Divine Legion did not split due to the existing boycott, Yi Shiwen would look for an opportunity to get rid of this hidden danger. After all, Yi Shiwen was clear about their fanatical behavior when dealing with the Divine Legion previously. These crazy fanatics were a headache. Even if they couldn't deal with Yi Shiwen, they would target his relative in Yuan sect. These people did not have the strength of Yi Shiwen. They were at most at the Truth Realm. For the remnants of the Divine Legion, Yi Shiwen could wipe out the whole legion. Yi Shiwen absolutely could not allow such hidden danger to exist. With Yi Ziwen's status at true martial school, it would be painless even if the top levels denounced him. It would be impossible to impose huge constraints on him. Yi Shiwen could only become more at ease when Divine Legion dispersed. But what really made him uneasy was that the unpredictable first Divine Lord who disappeared. Moreover, according to the news he got from Jiao Mujiao, the first Divine Lord had gone to Southern Dipper for help and became a constellation of Southern Dippers. This became a serious issue. As a member of Big Dipper, although Yi Shiwen did not participate in Big Dipper to a great extent, he still knew very well about the powerful strength of Big Dipper. That was why he could even imagine Southern Dipper's strength, who had contended against Big Dippers for so many years. Under the nurture of the Southern Dipper, it was expected that the cultivation of the first Divine Lord would soar. Yi Shiwen did not know what would be his level when meeting him again. This was also a huge hidden threat, but Yi Shiwen had no way to go about it. In terms of the news from the Southern Dipper, Big Dipper obtained it in great difficulty despite fighting them for countless years. What's more, between Yi Shiwen and the Big Dipper, it could only be regarded as a cooperative relationship. Yi Shiwen was not integrated into the Big Dipper. He couldn't get much information. So even if Yi Shiwen wanted to eradicate him, there was no other way. At this time, his strength was still too poor. He couldn't really rush directly to the Southern Dipper's base. As for the Southern Dipper's nest, even if it was located, it must be well guarded. Never mind Yi Ziwen's body, even if Star Beast Avatar went, it would be a dead end. So, Yi Shiwen simply had no way against the first Divine Lord who had surrendered to the Southern Dipper. He had to wait for opportunity slowly, waiting for one day to get more news about the first Divine Lord, and then look for opportunities to eliminate the first Divine Lord. But now there was another organization under the banner of Divine. Yi Shiwen had a strong hunch that it was likely that the Divine Legion was dispatched. Afterward, Yi Shiwen asked a few more questions, including that member's clothing and the like. After a brief comparison, Yi Shiwen was sure that this Divine Legion was the Divine Legion in its mind. If it was the Divine Legion, then it would really be troublesome. But the Divine Legion was not a big deal to Yi Shiwen, even though it was undeniably very powerful for the disciples of the Southeast region or these law enforcement hall disciples. What really made him afraid was the first Divine Lord. If the first Divine Lord reappeared again, the probability of the first Divine Lord confronting Yi Shiwen and his family would be high. It would not be so likely usually. After all, the first Divine Lord was still part of Southern Dipper. Unfortunately, Yi Shiwen predicted correctly. The first Divine Lord appeared again, and the target was Yi Ziwen's family. Although the disciple didn't say that, Yi Shiwen came to this judgment immediately. Compared to the entire South region, the Southeast region was just a remote place worth nothing at all. The Big Dipper and neither the Divine Legion would put this area in their eyes. Even the Great Ming Empire next to the top 10 countries in the Southeast region was disregarded by them. Even though their invasion might put limitations on true martial school, the biggest reason was that there were no resources worthy of them here. The only reason Yi Shiwen could think of was related to himself. That was for revenge to eradicate all his family members. Although the first Divine Lord might not be able to fight Yi Shiwen, it was more than enough to clean up his family. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen immediately became anxious and quickly said to the disciples of Law Enforcement Hall, "Thank you, I will not send you back. You just have to follow the direction I came. I eradicated the rebellious organizations on my journey here. If you go back to true martial school in the direction I came from, you should be able to avoid a lot of trouble." After speaking, Yi Shiwen couldn't care about saying goodbye to them and spread out a pair of golden wings directly behind him. They fluttered and Yi Shiwen flew out. Although Yi Shiwen hurriedly left without saying goodbye, none of the Law Enforcement Hall disciples felt anything and even felt a little flattered. Although they had bad blood with Yi Shiwen, Yi Ziwen's status today had escalated further than future Hall Master, Mu Shengjie. For a great character, they would feel flattered for a simple cup hand gesture especially. It was common in a group. Generally, for the strong, even if anyone manages to chat with them, the person will be elated for a long time. The Law Enforcement Hall disciple might not admire Yi Shiwen now, but Yi Shiwen had become a peerless character in their hearts unconsciously. In their hearts, Yi Shiwen was not on the same level as Mu Shengjie, but it was not too far away. No matter what, Yi Shiwen was a character they needed to look up to. I didn't expect this Yi Shiwen to actually grow to such a degree in just a few decades. Before that, most likely no one thought about it. A disciple of Law Enforcement Hall said with a sigh. He spoke out the inner voice of most Law Enforcement Hall disciples, especially the elite disciples among them. They dismissed Yi Shiwen at first and only felt that he was an irrelevant clown who was unmatched with their Law Enforcement Hall. However, when they really opened their eyes and took this opponent they had never put in their eyes seriously, he found that Yi Ziwen's progress was too fast. They soon were unable to catch up. When they were able to deal with Yi Shiwen, they dismissed it. When they wanted to deal with Yi Shiwen, they found that the situation was reversed, but Yi Shiwen disregarded them. Perhaps, besides Mu Shengjie, these people had no qualifications for Yi Shiwen to put her into his eyes. Yeah, who has expected that? As they said, heroes born in a troubled world. A person like him can stand out in this situation, said the leader of Law Enforcement Hall's disciple. Let's stop our chatter. We should hurry away. We still need to report to the Hall Master on the South Barbarian matter. Yep. Chapter 739. Chaotic Great Yu Empire. Yi Shiwen didn't know that the Law Enforcement Hall disciples behind him had so many complicated thoughts. In fact, as the Law Enforcement Hall disciples had complicated views on him, he was in the same shoe too. After all, Yi Shiwen had bad blood with the Law Enforcement Hall for decades. It still felt kinda weird. However, these thoughts only flashed in his mind in a glimpse. He couldn't get distracted once he learnt that the Divine Legion invaded the Great Yu Empire. He couldn't be a cold-blooded person who disregards his loved ones and family in trouble. For him, if these loved ones were all troubled because of him, then he might hate himself all his life. For him, nothing was more important than his family. If it was the Divine Legion as he had guessed, then the first Divine Lord must be in it, which was a good opportunity to eradicate the roots. I really didn't expect it. Despite my efforts to search high and low, my target is here. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly and said. His figure flew in midair, seemingly a cluster of golden light if viewed from a far distance. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared at the edge of the sky hastily. He almost penetrated the space. At this time, he was anxious. If he had known about it earlier, he would keep Star Beast Avatar at his side. With the help of Star Beast in the Great Sage Great Perfection realm, his speed would be much faster. Although his speed was not slow, It was paramount to accelerate even just a second since he was so anxious in his heart. However, it was useless to talk about it now. Yi Shiwen just gave all he got and flew out. Yi Shiwen, the so-called first divine lord of the Divine Legion, hid for so many years. He even surrendered himself to Southern Dipper. He would not be like you but mingled around Southern Dipper's circle. After so many years, he would most likely attain the full support from the Southern Dipper in his cultivation. The organization is very terrifying. If they cultivate a person with all their strength, he will definitely grow further after so many years and may pose a huge threat to you," said Yi Mo. "Hence, this is a great opportunity to eradicate the root. Even though your progress is also fast, this person might be a calamity in the future due to Southern Dipper's nurture. You should take advantage of this opportunity and behead him in one fell swoop to eliminate this calamity lurking in the shadow." Yi Mo suggested that for him. He was indifferent in offering such advice to Yi Shiwen. For him, he would disregard any values and morality as long as it would benefit Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was now his foundation. He could only recover if Yi Shiwen could live and develop peacefully. Yeah. Yi Shiwen nodded in all seriousness. In fact, he was also thinking of the same idea. Since the first Divine Lord dared to act so brazenly, there would not be a second chance. He would never let the first Divine Lord escape from his pursuit. I should be able to make it on time. Please, I beg you. Yi Shiwen prayed in his heart. The demon wings behind him fanned fanatically, but fortunately, this was a pair of wings condensed via energy. If it was a physical body, it would be torn off after this fanatical movement. But Yi Shiwen, who was in a hurry, couldn't care less. Soon, Yi Shiwen had already reached the border between the Great Yu Empire and Great Ming Empire. He stepped onto the ancient road here in the past, leading to the true martial school. However, as for his second return in comparison to the past, the several originally balanced forces in the Great Yu Empire were wiped out. All of it was because of the blood-garmented noble. Yuan sect had become the major force. For decades, Yuan sect had not wasted this opportunity and penetrated into all aspects of the Great Yu Empire. In the end, it transformed into the super overlord of the Great Yu Empire. Even the original Great Yu Empire's royal family had also become a puppet of Yuan sect. Yi Shiwen had the general knowledge of the situation. Even this place was far from true martial school, but it was not a completely different domain. If Yi Shiwen asked around, he would get some input. Chief Fifan would often bring some news from Yuan sect to Yi Shiwen too. Yi Shiwen was not affected by the news. It was the same everywhere. It was either the royal family suppressed the sect, or the sect took control of the royal family. There was no difference. It was merely a duplicate of true martial school's means to control the countries in the South region. The rising status of Yi Shiwen in the true martial school and his battle records were spread back to the Great Yu Empire one by one. Hence, the Mountain Qingfeng branch and the Yi family also became the elders of a Yuan sect headquarters due to their relationship with Yi Shiwen. They all had attained the truth power realm and even legendary. Even though they were minute ants in true martial school, they were a distinguished character in the southeast region. This was also the benefit brought by Yi Shiwen, so Yi Shiwen did not bring his parents to true martial school. There was simply no need for it. In true martial school, they could not enjoy such treatment. Entering the Great Yu Empire, Yi Shiwen saw another battlefield situation. After the previous Great War, all the forces of the Great Yu Empire were swept away, leaving only Yuan sect alone. Under the control of Yuan sect, the Great Yu Empire had become more prosperous. It was because they could develop more wholeheartedly without the restraint of other forces, so they quickly restored to their pre-war prosperity. But looking at the situation now, it was basically a troubled time enveloped in the flame of war. It was no better than the other countries in the South region, and potentially even worse than the countries in the South region. Yi Shiwen could see various demonic beasts running amok almost everywhere, roaring and attacking towns and villages. It was a scene akin to a Jura underworld. Damn it! Yi Shiwen roared. Every pore on his body seemed to exude sword chi. It was bombarded from the sky, eliminating large numbers of demonic beasts that were still running amok. Yi Shiwen slaughtered hundreds of them in each wave of attack. Many unarmed average civilian underneath saw Yi Shiwen save them and bowed down on the ground, thanking Yi Shiwen for his life-saving grace. However, Yi Shiwen didn't even bother to speak to them now and went straight to the direction of Yi Yuan sect. All the demonic beasts encountered along the way were all beheaded. Even Yi Shiwen saw that many demonic beasts in the water also took the opportunity to climb to the shore to kill indiscriminately. Something is amiss, Yi Shiwen. Take a look. Savage and absent-mindedness painted the eyes of these demonic beasts. They are obviously under someone's control. Yi Mo reminded. Yi Shiwen investigated it and realized it was true. Among the crimson eyes of these demonic beasts, there were rays running in them, which was just a sign of being controlled. Although he was flying in the sky at a great speed, he could still see it clearly. He was certain on his deductions. He became furious deep down his heart. He knew this was Divine Legion's means. No wonder, originally these demonic beasts will run amok, but these demonic beasts do not have any commander. Generally, the powerful demonic beast's commander will also be eliminated in the shortest period of time by the powerful sect. It is impossible for the demonic beasts to form a united force. This had not happened in the past. It could even be said that when the new human group just entered the true martial school, the demonic beast's ruler and the kingdom of demonic beasts could be said to be everywhere. Each of them was huge and terrifying. The demon beast king in the demon beast kingdom could command countless demonic beasts to charge into the battlefield. These beasts were not afraid of death, causing huge damage to human ancestors. Therefore, human beings were very afraid in this respect. Generally, if there were signs of any demonic beast's commander, they would often be annihilated in the first place. So even if there were demonic beasts running amok, it was rare. They were usually individual cases unless there was demonic beasts tied. However, it was quite rare on occasion. It was generally impossible to happen. But now, in almost every mountain, as long as there are demonic beasts, there are demonic beasts running amok in chaos. These demonic beasts even left the mountain and stirred up chaos at the mountain foot. There were also demonic beasts in the water. The demonic beasts from the sea also started to stir up chaos. It was an abnormal thing in itself. Although there were some demonic beasts having the wisdom not inferior to humans, they would be the minority. Most of the demonic beasts had limited wisdom. How would they know this was the best chance to stir up trouble and caught true martial school off guard? The Divine Legion must be behind this. Yi Ziwen's heart was immediately filled with anger. He was really determined to eradicate the entire Divine Legion. The bad blood between the Divine Legion and Yi Shiwen was so deep. The Divine Legion not only wanted to kill Yi Shiwen, but also eradicate the Yi Yuan sect, the Great Yu Empire, and even the entire East-South region. In this case, thousands of civilians would lose their lives. Yi Shiwen was self-aware that he was not a kind-hearted person, but he would never do such a heart-wrenching thing. The answer was already obvious. The first Divine Lord. Only he had the ability to mobilize the Divine Legion, and only he had such a motive. Yi Shiwen beheaded all of his brothers after all. The first Divine Lord must be beheaded. He had now caused such great trouble. If he is not beheaded this time, it would evolve into a much bigger mess. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen was exceptionally determined. Unconsciously, he had already approached the Yi Yuan sect. Before he got closer, he saw the Divine Legion surrounded the gate of Yi Yuan sect, covering the whole sky. Chapter 740. The Return of the Wolf Cub. Huge Divine's flags were waving in the sky. The Divine Legion was domineering. There were at least tens of thousands of people. Under the first Divine Lord's leadership, the Divine Legion had developed into this scale, albeit it was destroyed by Yi Shiwen at true martial school in the past. It was much more powerful than how it initially was. Undeniably, the first Divine Lord could rank first among the 5 Divine Lord. His means and strength were indeed incomparable to the average person. These were the elites, not less than the army that Yi Shiwen met on the extraterrestrial battlefield previously. One could imagine what kind of scene it would be when such an army invaded Yi Yuan sect collectively. The arrays of Yi Yuan sect were broken apart one by one. They were as wavering as bamboo sticks, despite Yi Shiwen playing a role in setting up those arrays. If only based on the arrays of Yi Yuan sect itself, it would probably be destroyed with no remnants left behind. However, Yi Shiwen was a little baffled. Based on the strength and level of Yuan sect, they could not even sustain themselves for even half an hour if they encountered a legion in this scale. However, this legion was unable to penetrate into the Yuan sect but stuck on the periphery. Although they were still advancing, there was still a big gap from the state of destruction. Motherfucker, shame on you, the first divine lord? You're really a gutless rat. You can only bully your opponent's family member. Do you dare to go against Yi Shiwen head-to-head? Come out and fight me if you're so capable. Suddenly, there was a familiar sound coming from Yuan sect. Then, a dark ray flew out of Yuan sect, but it was pitch black. It was a 2-foot-long wolf cub who looked like a native dog that jumped out. It directly rushed into the Divine Legion. Strands of divine light spattered from his body wherever he passed. Those members of the Divine Legion were bombarded on the spot. The wolf cub was just like a prehistoric vicious beast. Yi Shiwen was speechless. Oh my god, a creature like a native dog is none other than wolf cub. This wolf cub did not even grow bigger, but shrunk in size. But it is still like a ruffian. I can recognize it at first glance. Most importantly, Yi Shiwen was annoyed. If it wasn't for the fact that the Divine Legion were outside, Yi Shiwen would like to rush in to slap the wolf cub. Sure enough, it was the same as it was a few decades ago with not much difference. However, although Yi Shiwen was speechless, he was still very surprised when he saw the wolf cub. Although he and the wolf cub often played and quarreled with each other, it was still in fact the closest one to Yi Shiwen in the world. The wolf cub rescued him in many disasters. Only a few decades ago, the wolf cub of secretive origins was brought back by the people on Thousands Demon Beasts Island, saying that it would come back after close cultivation to Sage Realm. However, until Yi Shiwen himself entered Sage Realm, he didn't receive any news from the wolf cub. So, Yi Shiwen gave up the thoughts gradually. He was still clear about Thousands Demon Beasts Island's background. It was said to be Beast Clan's heaven. Yi Shiwen could still not forget the Beast King's grandeur. They said Beast King was someone who could compete with Demon King. Since Thousand Demon Beast Island was their home, God knows what dangers lay within it for Yi Shiwen. What Yi Shiwen saw last time was just the tip of the iceberg. Moreover, hazards were not the stronger deterrents. The most crucial issue was that even Yi Shiwen couldn't find the location of Thousands Demon Beasts Island. Thousands Demon Beasts Island's entrance was only available every 50 years. Last time was Yi Ziwen's first visit to Thousands Demon Beasts Island. Yi Shiwen was not sure whether Thousands Demon Beasts Island would open again or not. This bastard! Yi Shiwen laughed and scolded. His eyes were sparkling and translucent. Then he became solemn the next moment. Among the Divine Legion, a majestic aura rose through the sky. A terrifying great sage aura swept through the world. The first move was extremely fierce. It was a terrifying gray saber aura falling from the sky, slashing straight on Wolf Cub. It was an apparent attempt to split the Wolf Cub into half. The scene appeared as though heaven and earth was cut in half in an instant. Yi Shiwen just wanted to give warning, but the Wolf Club gave off a howl. His figure dashed forward, leaving a residual image behind. The saber aura only slashed on the residual image, thus did not hurt its physical body. But after this saber aura broke through the sky, it fell on the gate of Yuan sect. The vast mountains of Yuan sect were cut in half in an instant. Countless arrays were cut off by this saber aura in an instant. After all, although Yi Shiwen helped to strengthen these arrays in the past, the Yi Shiwen in the past was just a sage realm. At that time, the arrays arranged were better than Yuan sect. But they still couldn't resist the attack of a great sage realm. The entire array was completely obliterated under this saber. The great sage realm's strength was terrible. Among the Divine Legion, there was suddenly a jubilant battle cry. From the content of their cheering, Yi Shiwen knew it was the first Divine Legion who made the move. Some of my brothers died because of this native dog. Just cut it into half to pay tribute to my brothers. A cold voice rushed out among the clouds. As for that Yi Shiwen, he definitely will die. When all these remaining dregs are killed, I will naturally go to true martial school and behead him. You are the dreg. Your whole family is dreg, even your sect too. Fool, you only dare to boast. But do you really dare to face off him? True martial school is already in war. If a person like you goes there, you can only be regarded as a cannon fodder. Stop talking big. Wolf Cub scolded as he evaded the attacks. Wolf claws composed of divine light kept spreading from Wolf Cub's body. Every place it passed by, the Divine Legion would suffer a crushing defeat. The Wolf Cub's movement technique granted it haste. Despite being unmatched to Yi Zaiwen's demon wings, it was still an extraordinary movement technique. I don't need to explain myself to anyone else. It wasn't easy to find you, stupid dog. Since you come to the door, I'm going to stew a pot of dog meat tonight. Another sneer of the first Divine Lord came from the sky. The Divine Lord's cold voice was filled with arrogance. He did not put the Wolf Cub's words in his eyes. Divine Lord being a person fluent in conspiracy made him a difficult opponent to be dealt with. Saber aura kept bombarding from the sky. However, for the Wolf Cub with the extremely fast movement technique, the Saber aura couldn't catch up at all. Every time, the Wolf Cub dodged the attack with a narrow gap. On the contrary, wherever he went, those members of the Divine Legion were startled. This made the first Divine Lord to be a bit irritable. He directly appeared in the sky. It was a man in iron-plated armor. This iron-plated armor emitted series of divine light. The divine light fluctuating on his body made him appear like an imposing god. His face was completely covered in the iron helmet, making it impossible for people to see through. After I eradicate this Yuan sect, I will slaughter this dog. The first Divine Lord was impatient for being unable to kill the Wolf Cub. He quickly moved his gaze to Yuan sect, which was also the main purpose of him coming this time. Sinister vibe kept seeping out from his iron helmet. I can finally take my revenge. For many years, after all my brothers were slaughtered one by Yi Shiwen, I had been planning this for a long time. I must eradicate Yuan sect from the roots without leaving any trace. I will let Yi Shiwen taste the pain of losing loved ones. Although the 5 of them were not blood-related brothers, they had fought together side by side for many years. They were closer than blood-related brothers. Finally, they established the Divine Legion. They thought they could come to true martial school. Who knows, before they could make a fame, they were destroyed by Yi Shiwen first. Not only did Yi Shiwen plummeted the brothers' dreams, even his 4 younger brothers all died in the hands of Yi Shiwen. For him, it was a deep hatred, terrible bad blood. Holding this bad blood in mind, he turned to Southern Dipper and practiced martial arts. Unlike Yi Shiwen, who was Big Dipper's outer member, he really turned to Southern Dipper fully to achieve his revenge and became a Southern Dipper's member. Under the Southern Dipper's resources, his martial arts rapidly improved. Coupled with his extraordinary martial arts talents, his strength was the strongest among the 5 divine god. When he was on the ancient road, he was already a Sage Realm Master. Due to this, the Divine Legion expanded so fast. He had escalated into the Great Sage more than 20 years ago. Since that time, he had recruited troops again to rebuild his Divine Legion. All of it was to return and wipe out a Yuan sect. He could only vent his hatred when he eradicated Yi Shiwen. Originally, this plan had to be put on hold. After all, Yi Zaiwen's strength was also very strong. Although Yi Zaiwen's progress in cultivation was not as good as him, he did not dare to underestimate Yi Shiwen. Of course, the most important thing was that the southeast region composed of 10 empires were under the ruling of true martial school. If the situation inexplicably develops into slaughtering an empire, it would definitely attract the intervention of the true martial school's masters. By that time, he would fail his revenge and potentially be stuck in a dead end. Heaven will not disappoint the person who tries. He finally got the opportunity. It was Emergent School's invasion at True Martial School. With the invasion of Emergent School, True Martial School was fundamentally struggling to protect itself, let alone want to maintain order in its sovereign territory. Hence, this was the best time for him to take revenge. He came in majesty with his divine legion to wipe out all forces related to Yi Shiwen. Even though he did not dare to lay his hand on true martial school, it was still easy to deal with such small forces as the Yuan sect. This was a God-given opportunity. How would he anticipate that there would be a native dog coming out of nowhere? Even though this dog was inexplicably the accomplices of the person who killed his brother, the irritation coming from the trouble brought by the dog was more annoying than the death of his brothers. Please go to read the latest chapters for free. Chapter 741, Brother. This wolf cub's fighting style was irritating, worthy to the name of guerrilla warfare. However, in his view, it was basically an annoying psoriasis that was hard to get rid of. Most importantly, that agile movement technique made it difficult for the first Divine Lord to catch up. This native dog was also a great sage. Its mannerism was legendarily rogue. It really made him feel helpless. Seeing that the first Divine Lord was about to slash toward Yuan sect with his saber, Wolf Cub quickly returned and shouted, "The first Divine Lord, fight me if you are a man. What's so great with bullying someone weaker than you?" "Umph." The first Divine Lord in the iron-plated armor snorted and did not take Wolf Cub's words to heart. "I will just eradicate this Yuan sect. Then I will come and slash you, stupid dog." With that, the first Divine Lord raised the saber. Bizarre saber aura composed of black saber aura and white saber aura formed at his saber handle. The power of yin and yang was boiling within, then it burst out. It eventually formed a balanced power, painted in gray. The aura appeared terrifying. White represents life, and black represents death. Life and death were seemingly under his control. This was a level that only God could attain. This was due to his special martial techniques. Yi Shiwen knew it clearly. He found some clues from the memories of the second, third, fourth, and fifth Divine Lord. Despite them being the first Divine Lord's brothers, they actually didn't know much about the secrets of the first Divine Lord. When these brothers were half-step legendary, the first Divine Lord had already attained the Sage Realm. Hence, there was not much chance to see his technique. In other words, every time when there was a strong enemy, the first Divine Lord would only join the battlefield in a short while. During that time, no one could let him use all his strength. In the hearts of the second Divine Lord onwards, the first Divine Lord was like God. They also never see him make a move before. They only had fragmented information about the first Divine Lord's martial arts. They only knew the first Divine Lord practiced a martial art called Yin and Yang Rainbow. This martial art did not sound cool, but it was devastating because it involved the power of yin and yang. These two elements belonged to Tai Chi too, which divided the power of yin and yang. It was just that the scenes from the second Divine Lord's original memory showed that when the first Divine Lord made a move, only one among the yin and yang forces was utilized at a time. At that time, that move was already excellent. However, it was still incomparable to the combined strength of yin and yang. So from that time on, Yi Shiwen was vigilant toward the first Divine Lord. Although it was just some brief scenes of the first Divine Lord using martial arts, it was enough to deter Yi Shiwen at that time. The power of yin and yang was undoubtedly a high-level law among martial art warriors. When it was evolved to the extreme, it could transform into primal chaos. In other words, the beginning of all things. After all things were evolved from chaos. One could imagine how powerful the yin and yang law was. In this encounter with the first Divine Lord, he first shot already involved the combination of yin and yang. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but startled. The Divine Legion, which approached the ancient road and almost wiped out all the other sects, was extraordinary. If it was Yi Shiwen at the time, it was hopelessly impossible to escape if he were to encounter the first Divine Lord. The gap between half-step legendary and sage realm masters was so unimaginable. Despite Yi Shiwen being arrogant, he was still self-aware. Wolf Cub immediately pounced the first Divine Lord after seeing his action. Wolf Cub swooped over like a hungry wolf. Its movement technique was extremely fast and almost approached the first Divine Lord. If this first Divine Lord continued unscrupulously, then Yuan sect would be really destroyed by him. It knew the might of a great sage very well, because it was also a great sage itself. Especially for the warriors below the great sage realm, the great sage was like God. There was no way to fight back. Of course, a monster like Yi Shiwen couldn't be counted. He could kill a great sage during half-step great sage realm. However, it didn't mean that others could do it. Such talent was so rare that it would only appear once every few years. The first Divine Lord sneered. The saber immediately changed its direction and slashed at the wolf cub. The long saber was as heavy as a mountain was slashed at the wolf cub. Everyone immediately understood that this was a huge trap. A trap to lure the wolf cub in. The first Divine Lord still wanted to eliminate wolf cub first. He would want to get rid of the threat that could wrestle with him. As for Yuan sect, he had never put it in his eyes. Getting a few members in the Divine Legion was enough to wipe out the Yuan sect. He came here in majesty to vent his anger. He wanted to let Yi Shiwen taste the pain of losing loved ones. He could only quench his anger by slaughtering the entire Yuan sect. At that time, it would really be a great pleasure to put the head of Yi Ziwen's loved ones in front of him and watch Yi Shiwen go berserk. His plan was indeed very insidious, but it was also very effective. If the first Divine Lord succeeded, then Yi Shiwen would be grief-stricken. That was also the reason why Yi Shiwen did not go back to true martial school and hurried to Yuan sect. It was a pity that this native dog came out halfway and disturbed his plan. Otherwise, he could have eradicated a Yuan sect already. Thinking of this, he was furious, and he had to kill the dog first. Look out! Be careful! No! There were countless yells from Yuan sect. Countless people felt their heart hanging. This wolf cub was intimate to them because it was really close to the hero in their Yuan sect, Yi Shiwen. Although Yi Shiwen did not visit Yuan sect for decades, and there were many newcomers in Yuan sect, the legend about Yi Shiwen was never forgotten. As the top-notch legend of Yuan sect, Yi Shiwen had done many feats in Yuan sect, and the spree did not stop at true martial school. Soon after, he became the legend of true martial school. It solidified his position as the idol of fresh new disciples. After all, they were all young people. All of them were ambitious to make more achievements and to stand out. However, they were facing a brutal reality. They came from all over the Great Yu Empire. As the Yuan sect gathered all the talents of the Great Yu Empire, Yi Ziwen's story was quickly incorporated as inspirational stories. Even the wolf cub who followed Yi Shiwen had become well known. Everyone knew that Yi Shiwen had a wolf that looked like a native dog. Although many people had not seen it, they recognized wolf cub as soon as it had appeared. At this time, wolf cub was deceived and they could not help but be worried. The wolf cub that suddenly appeared at this time became the only savior in their hearts. If something happened to it, then Yuan sect was really over. Boom! The gray saber aura slashed onto wolf cub's body. Wolf cub immediately screamed in pain and rolled straight down. Almost the entire waist was cut in half. For the wolf clan, the waist was their most fragile spot. There was a saying, tofu waist, 1. It applied even on wolf cub. With a loud click, his entire waist and bones were broken. Bone fragments splattered all over. It was badly mutilated. What a tragic sight. There was a hint of surprise in the eyes of the first Divine Lord. Unexpectedly, he failed to slash it into half with the saber. He was a veteran. Thus, he definitely knew the waist was the weakness of the wolf clan. The saber slashed directly at its weakness without holding back. Even the mountains and rivers would be slashed into half by his saber, but this waist was now slashed into half by this slash. This wolf definitely had a physical body far beyond his expectations. But that was fine for him. Adding another slash was enough to kill it. In the eyes of the first Divine Lord, the murderous intention flickered. The gray saber aura on the long saber in his hand suddenly splashed. It all surged forward again to slash towards wolf cub. First Divine Lord, don't you want to find me? I'm here. Yi Shiwen had to scream loudly as he flew over from a distance. Yi Shiwen. The eyes of the first Divine Lord flickered immediately. The loud shout was thunderous, stirring up clouds. The anger of a great sage could make the world cry. Yi Shiwen stepped forward calmly, but did not look at the first Divine Lord at all. His gaze fell directly on the wolf cub. It looked very dismal. The entire back was badly mutilated with many broken ribs. "You're finally here." Wolf cub grinned. It gritted its teeth in pain. Its black furry face suddenly showed extremely human-like emotions, reflecting the agonizing pain. Obviously, even though the first Divine Lord's saber aura didn't slash it in two, it was a fatal blow. "This motherfucker. Kill this bastard, and revenge me. Can't you just dodge it?" Yi Shiwen looked at its current situation, and he couldn't help but pull its leg. "Don't you have eyes? You're lucky for not getting cut into half by this saber." "Hey, I didn't think about it that much that time. If I dodge it, the whole mountain will be split into half by him. When you come back, you will definitely panic." Wolf cub laughed and breathed in cold air. It lied down, unable to move. "Beat him up." Yi Shiwen didn't say anything but felt warm in his heart. What a great brother. 1. Tofu is very weak in nature. It is an analogy emphasizing how fragile the waist is. Please go to read the latest chapters for free. Chapter 742. My brother said he would beat you up. It definitely lived up the name as a brother. Although Wolf Cub was not a human being, Yi Shiwen did not treat it as a pet. It didn't even have a so-called contract from beginning to end, having the freedom to come and go. In addition to the lack of human form, this wolf was not much different from ordinary people in Yi Ziwen's heart. Wolf Cub could obviously dodge it, but now it didn't. It knew that it might be a trap, but it still threw its own body over to protect the Yuan sect. Brother Yi Shiwen. Brother Yi Shiwen is back. What? Is he Senior Brother Yi? Sure enough, it is him. I have a portrait. It's definitely him. Many of the Yi Yuan sect disciples underneath cried out. It's definitely Yi Shiwen. Many young disciples of Yi Yuan sect regarded Yi Shiwen as their idol, so when they saw Yi Shiwen appear, they immediately recognized him. It is Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, you came here to redeem your death. Great, let me send you off to pay tribute to my brothers. There was no way for the first Divine Lord to calm down after seeing Yi Shiwen. He spoke in a low muffled voice. He hated Yi Shiwen so much that he couldn't wait to butcher Yi Shiwen right away. It was the man in front of him who beheaded several of his younger brothers and made him lose his loved ones. There was absolute bad blood between them. He could not wait to kill Yi Shiwen immediately. Yi Shiwen turned to the first Divine Lord and said, "Did you hear what my brother said just now? I'm going to beat you up." Yi Shiwen didn't continue to bother Wolf Cub. Although the injury was serious, Wolf Cub possessed the Phoenix regeneration technique, and these wounds would soon heal. Long ago, Yi Shiwen had passed the Phoenix regeneration technique to Wolf Cub. Although Wolf Cub itself had its own secret healing technique, it was definitely not as good as the Phoenix regeneration technique. It was only a matter of time for Wolf Cub, who had the Phoenix regeneration technique, to recover as long as it still hung on its last breath. Yi Shiwen dashed out directly and instantly lifted the entire battlefield several altitudes away. He did not want to affect the Yi Yuan sect underneath. He rushed directly into the Divine Legion and placed the battlefield in the center of Divine Legion. By then, only the Divine Legion would sustain death and injury. Wolf Cub had the same idea previously, but it was unsuccessful. The reason was simple. It did not have substantial value to lure everyone's aggression, including the first Divine Lord. Rather, it was lured into the first Divine Lord's trap. However, Yi Shiwen was in a different situation. There was bad blood between him and the first Divine Lord, with death the only way to settle the dispute. Die. The first Divine Lord's words were very simple. Yi Shiwen must die. He wouldn't allow Yi Shiwen to stay alive. There was no hesitation at all. The first Divine Lord directly came in pursuit. The gray saber aura emitted out of his weapon immediately. A devastating wave instantly rippled out. The saber aura covered the entire sky. Countless Divine Legion's troops were destroyed by this saber. The first Divine Lord, who went berserk, couldn't care much. Even in his heart, these Divine Legions were just some slaves. Actually, it was just a little better than slaves. In fact, it was not much better off. Any death was worthwhile as long as he could kill Yi Shiwen, then everything was worth it. What a terrible master! With just a move, Yi Shiwen immediately recognized the first Divine Lord had entered the realm of the Great Sage Realm Peak. No one knew what the first Divine Lord had been through that enabled him to enter the Great Sage Realm Peak. On the other hand, the mystery was the same as Yi Shiwen. Wasn't he merely a Sage Realm previously? Wasn't he a Great Sage Realm now? Yi Shiwen had all kinds of adventures. With the intensive cultivation of Southern Dipper, the first Divine Lord was not inferior. The first Divine Lord showed his tyrannical strength. The Great Sage Realm Peak that Yi Shiwen beheaded previously was nothing in the face of the first Divine Lord. Yi Shiwen could feel the terrifying saber aura chasing behind him. The terrible saber aura was mixed with the power of yin and yang, enough to shatter a mountain range. The first Divine Lord was inherently talented, much more tyrannical than other Divine Lords in the past. When they were half-step legendary, he was already Sage Realm. The matter of Yi Shiwen stepping into Sage Realm was also a matter of decades ago. Yi Shiwen was totally unmatched. In the past few decades, the first Divine Lord was not idle either. Obviously, he had relentlessly cultivated Gilded Tyrant form technique. Yi Shiwen screamed in an instant, and countless divinity spewed out from the pores, like a golden thread wrapping him up. There were seemingly gilded water waves on Yi Shiwen if observed from a distance. Boom! Saber's aura bombarded Yi Shiwen's body ruthlessly. After the bombardment, a mushroom cloud rose up into the sky, spreading a powerful shock wave and swept out in all directions. Those nearby Divine Legion's warriors were shocked to death. A terrible wave dispersed, but Yi Shiwen only swayed a little in such a blow. This first Divine Lord was indeed tyrannical. If it was in that past, Yi Shiwen had no chance to escape. However, the situation was different now. The first Divine Lord was progressing, but Yi Shiwen was progressing at a faster rate. Both sides were not on equal ground in the past. Kill this bastard. Kill him and avenge several other Divine Lords. Many Divine Legion rushed towards Yi Shiwen with various slogans. It was quite terrifying for having 10,000 people charge towards him in the sky. Yi Shiwen didn't plan to fight against them at all. A pair of storm wings suddenly appeared behind him. With a quick fan, the entire sky was engulfed in the stormy sea. When the Divine Legion rushed in, they would be electrocuted to death or got cut into several pieces by the storm blade. In this huge sea of storm, that was Yi Shiwen's battlefield. Although it couldn't pose a great threat to the real masters, it was a dead end for these ordinary warriors. What a worthy weapon for large-scale warfare. With this storm wing, Yi Shiwen could manage the battle easily. Of course, the premise was that the opponent must not be a powerful expert. If there were 10,000 great sages, Yi Shiwen could only bring Yi Yuan's sect along to flee. 10,000 great sages. Even if Yi Shiwen stepped into the transcendent realm, there was no other way than to escape immediately. Fortunately, although the Divine Legion was known as elite, it was impossible to have 10,000 great sages in it. Although there were several great sages in it, they were far inferior from Yi Shiwen and the first Divine Lord. "I'm going to beat you up." Yi Shiwen shook his body and immediately went straight to the first Divine Lord. Since the stormy sea stopped the Divine Legion masters who wanted to come in, it led Yi Shiwen to compete with the first Divine Lord one-to-one. Yi Shiwen did not need to face the army composed of 10,000 people in one breath. At this time, Yi Shiwen suddenly entered the state of enlightenment. The golden divinity was boiling. As Yi Shiwen punched out, a devastating star power swept out, and the impact force rippled in circles. In the face of the long saber of the first Divine Lord, Yi Shiwen did not give in at all with no intention to dodge away. In the vast sky, a picture of yin and yang was drawn under the first Divine Lord's saber aura. It represented the first Divine Lord's saber intent and swooshed down. The entire sword intention was fully integrated into this slash. Kill! A glare filled with hatred. His gaze never left Yi Shiwen. The long saber carried an aura capable of destroying the world as though the saber signified the symbol of world destruction. Yi Ziwen's fist was also greatly stimulated. It directly manifested a big star. The surrounding environment had become a universe. This was his fist will. Shattered Star Fist's fist will. A lonely fist intention embodied destruction swept out. Both sides did all they could. It was a terrible confrontation between the two great sage. Boom! This huge sound didn't wait for the terrible shock wave to burst out. The sound alone had shaken the surrounding space into random pieces, leaking chaos pool. The remaining strength of their attack rushed directly into the chaos. Suddenly, amidst the chaos pool, a turbulent wave erupted, and a large amount of chaos leaked out. You have grown to such a point. The first Divine Lord saw Yi Shiwen successively confronted two of his moves, and immediately frowned. He hadn't met such a difficult opponent. Since he set foot on the cultivation road, there were rarely any opponents among his peers. He could be said to be at the top of the same rank. Anyone in the same rank would not be able to contend against him. What's more, Yi Shiwen just entered the Great Sage realm recently. His gaze was sly but keen. How could he not notice Yi Ziwen's foundation was just a Great Sage initial? It was also precisely this that made him more worried. Yi Shiwen was just a Great Sage initial master now. It was already so difficult to deal with. If Yi Shiwen were allowed to grow continuously, the first Divine Lord situation would be reversed. Rather than him suppressing Yi Ziwen's growth, it would be his death. I didn't expect it. It was only a few decades. You really are a born talent. I haven't seen a talent more powerful than you in my life. However, because of this, you have to die here and right now. I won't let you live to become a threat. Just die. The first Divine Lord yelled. His whole body permeated a terrifying aura. The aura exploded into a mess, distorting the surrounding space. In the meantime, his strength was pushed to a terrifying height. Another slash fell directly, which was just a breathing time away from the previous one. This slash was quick, accurate, and ruthless. It rushed towards Yi Shiwen directly. Please go to read the latest chapters for free. Chapter 743. Really beat him up? This slash fully portrayed the power of a master in Great Sage Peak when he was angry. What a great slash! Yi Shiwen could almost feel that he was locked on at once. This was the integration between both human and the saber. This saber art almost had the illusion of reborning the world. What is yin and yang? It is the initial entity that evolved from chaos. The so-called Tao begets one. The first is chaos, then the chaos creates yin-yang. The yin and yang creates the four divine beasts. The four divine beasts then gradually create everything. It could be said that the power of yin and yang and the saber arts involving the two were fundamentally approaching chaos. Moving forward would be the grand way. Then, it would advance into the death of all things. It could be said as a very remarkable way, especially when this way was incorporated into the saber arts. Yi Shiwen could almost see the trajectory of the saber aura, slipping and replaying chaos in the evolving world. It was a very strange and entirely opposite scene. But they were all united together. Yi Shiwen made a move in an instant. Divinity in him burst into countless lights, and in each ray of light there was a deity chanting long-lasting scriptures. All those saber chi were cracked at once. The delivered fist blasted out in an instant, and the power of the stars began to sweep out with a devastating wave. In a flash, it seemed that the entire universe had entered a withering period, began to shrink and step into destruction. This was the ultimate will of the Shattered Star Fist. The universe that was just manifested was just the beginning. What was a great destruction? It marked the path from prosperity to extinction. So the universe that Yi Shiwen manifested came from nothingness, and then became prosperous. Later on, it walked its path to perish, stepping into another nothingness. It was a cycle. After completing a cycle, this was the real great destruction. However, Yi Shiwen could only borrow the strength from the birth of great destruction, making the entire universe abnormally vibrant. However, he could not attain the path to extinction. Hence, he had no way to really exert the real power of Shattered Star Fist. But today, as he saw the first Divine Lord's saber aura, he suddenly came into enlightenment. The so-called way of life and death was a mutation of yin and yang. It was inevitably the combination or transformation of the two powers. Since the power of yin and yang could be transformed into each other, the power between birth and death could also be transformed into each other. Therefore, the bottleneck of Shatterstar Fist which Yi Shiwen had stuck for a long time was seemingly approaching a breakthrough. It might take more time to consolidate, but it was much better than before. Boom! There was another bang. A huge mushroom cloud rose from where the two exchanged blows, but what was slightly different from the previous one was that it almost slashed Yi Shiwen in half. This was the first Divine Lord's slash that contained anger. The saber aura was terrifying. It instantly terminated many cells in Yi Ziwen's body, delivering a lethal blow on Yi Shiwen. If Yi Ziwen's physical body was not domineering, he would have already been slashed into half at once. That would really be a dead end. Some secret technique allowed mutilated arms to reconnect. However, if the physical body was slashed into half, there were no remedies at all. But at this time, the first Divine Lord situation was not any better. He launched an attack with all his strength. The same applied to Yi Shiwen. The punch directly connected on his chest, instantly crushing his countless defenses. The inner armor of the holy tool was also ruined by Yi Shiwen in a flash. His chest was completely sunken, his bones were broken, his physical body was badly mangled. It was far worse than what happened on Wolf Cub just now. Trails of blood gushed out from the corner of his mouth. Disbelief was reflected in his eyes. He never expected that Yi Shiwen was capable of hurting him. He decided to come here because he felt Yi Shiwen was definitely not his opponent. Even if Yi Shiwen entered the Great Sage realm, the strength gap between great sages was also huge. For him, what happened right now should be impossible and could only be explained as a miracle. But now, this miracle actually happened. He was still a stepping stone, which made him fall into disbelief. Good job, beat him up? On the side, Wolf Cub started to cheer and jumped up and down. He had the Phoenix regeneration technique. As long as he had enough time, he could recover from any serious injury. Although the injuries just now looked serious, it was nothing with the help of the Phoenix regeneration technique. After a while, his injuries had recovered more or less. At this time, he was able to jump around and cheered. However, at this time, he did not leave Yuan Sect's gate even one step away. It really wanted to help Yi Shiwen, but it knew that the biggest help for Yi Shiwen at this time was to help him guard Yuan Sect. The current Yuan Sect was Yi Ziwen's weakness. Yi Shiwen would bare teeth to anyone against the Yuan Sect. The Wolf Cub knew it was better to protect his town rather than be more of a hindrance than a help. Yi Shiwen had a bitter face. By this hour, it still stood aside to watch the show. Yi Shiwen felt helpless. However, at this time, he could not care about the Wolf Club anymore. With the same Phoenix regeneration technique, Yi Ziwen's injury was improving at a shocking rate. Then he stretched out his whole body. The horrifying Great Sage's aura swept the battlefield again in an instant. He didn't wait for the first Divine Lord to react. He rushed directly forward and delivered yet another shattered star fist. It was not that he knew nothing else, but he almost developed shattered star fist from the stage of prosperity to the stage of perish. To breach this gap and advance into the perish stage from the stage of prosperity, he would need a lot of experience. So he didn't even change his posture and bombarded another fist again. He wanted to defeat the first Divine Lord, so he had to utilize this opportunity. He knew that this first Divine Lord was strong, so he had to utilize this time gap. The Phoenix regeneration technique was better and faster than the other secret healing technique. Hence, he continued the pressure to defeat his opponent. Just now, Yi Shiwen would never underestimate him. The first Divine Lord looked cold and said, "How come? How could there be such a horrifying recovery technique?" Just when Yi Shiwen first recovered, the first Divine Lord was in the middle of recovery. Although he had a secret healing technique, it could not be compared with Yi Ziwen's Phoenix regeneration technique. At this moment of hesitation, Yi Shiwen directly rushed to the front. The first Divine Lord was forced to embrace it. He wanted to delay time, so he slashed his long saber toward Yi Shiwen again. Boom! The powerful shock wave generated by the two lashed out again, and the two separated again. However, the result was fundamentally different from what many people imagined. The first Divine Lord stepped back a few steps and stopped. Every pore of his body was permeated with blood. Yi Shiwen had incurred damage on the internal organs, including his muscle too. He had not recovered as fast as Yi Shiwen was already. Now he was still in a state of imperfection and fought face-to-face with Yi Shiwen, who had returned to the peak with Phoenix regeneration technique. In this brawl, he was injured further. From afar, every pore of his body was still permeating blood. At a glance, he was like a bloody man. Yi Shiwen forced him into this situation. Otherwise, he would not end up as such. However, Yi Shiwen gave no mercy to this first Divine Lord and directly pounced on him again. This was the so-called taking advantage of an opponent's injured state. The first Divine Lord was determined to kill Yi Shiwen to vent his anger. Yi Shiwen would definitely not let a threat like this persist. The best way was to eradicate the first Divine Lord and eliminate the roots. After beheading and killing the first Divine Lord, Yi Shiwen could only feel at ease. Then he would eradicate the entire Divine Legion from the roots. With that, there would not be such worries in the future. Yi Shiwen pounced directly, and the speed of the first Divine Lord, who was injured by Yi Shiwen, was greatly affected. At this time, he couldn't even walk. He could only fight with all he got. He wanted to shoulder over this wave of attack. If he could survive, his injury would soon recover. By then, the situation could be completely reversed. The most important thing now was that he could stop getting suppressed by Yi Shiwen. In the battle, the worst taboo was to allow the opponents to fight at their wish. Many times, when the opponent fought in advantage in the way they wanted while at the same time getting completely suppressed by the opponent, it would lead to a dead end. This was the first time he treated it seriously. It was an impossible miracle for him previously. How could a person who just stepped into Great Sage Realm recently kill a Great Sage Peak Master? It should be simply impossible. At this time, he could only force himself to fight with Yi Shiwen. Boom! The first Divine Lord was like a kite with a broken thread. He once again directly flew out. The blood was spitting all over the sky. The scene was very tragic. Most of his bones were broken. His strength was not worse than Yi Shiwen, but because Yi Shiwen recovered faster than him, this caused him to continue to be injured and be completely suppressed. The Divine Legion and the Yuan sect were dumbfounded watching this scene. Just now Wolf Cub asked Yi Shiwen to help him to avenge him and beat the first Divine Lord. Now he really did it. He had beaten up the first Divine Lord. Please go to read the latest chapters for free. Chapter 744, Bloodline Power. Yi Shiwen actually beat him up. Everyone stared at this scene stupidly, especially Divine Legion. The first Divine Lord was like God in their hearts, but now the person they were devoted to in their hearts were utterly defeated. Their world had simply collapsed. The people of Yuan sect found this scene unbelievable too. They knew how strong the first Divine Lord was. Yet, Yi Shiwen actually defeated a great villain capable of destroying the entire Yuan sect. After so many years, little one had advanced so much in strength. Within Yuan sect's array at the mountain gate, Lin Zhantian sighed. Several decades had passed and Yi Ziwen's progress was already at a stage where people could only marvel at. Lin Zhantian was only 200 years old, but he felt that he had passed his prime at this time. Compared with Yi Shiwen, the gap was indeed farther and farther away. Indeed, Great Sage, a realm that could only be heard in legend. Yi Kongming beside Lin Zhantian said with a sigh. The nervous air just now disappeared because of the appearance of Yi Shiwen. He was filled with pride in his heart too. No matter how far Yi Shiwen had developed, it was still his son. Although Yi Shiwen was not his biological son, Yi Shiwen was no different from blood-related ones in his heart. Having a legend born in Yuan sect is really the blessings of our ancestors, said Lin Zhantian. Besides him, many seniors of Yuan sect nodded one after another. At this time, both Lin Zhantian and Yi Kongming were already among the seniors of Yuan sect. In addition to the factors of Yi Shiwen, the rapid progress of their own strength was also a great reason for it. Yi Shiwen sent many high-quality ingredients and treasures back from time to time. Decades later, they had already entered the legendary realm. In fact, according to the standards of true martial school, they were still regarded as a young talent, the same generation with Yi Shiwen. However, they were the senior generation in this Yuan sect. In Yuan sect, a legendary realm master could definitely be regarded as a senior. The development speed of Yuan sect in these years was rapid. It was due to the close relation and the support of Yi Shiwen. Even the Great Yu Empire had developed greatly and become the leader in the 10 countries of the Eastern South region. This was precise due to the presence of Yi Shiwen, an absolute tyrannical master as the backer. Even as Yi Shiwen stepped into the Great Sage realm, with his support, the Great Yu Empire directly annexed other countries and became a great behemoth like the Great Ming Empire. Yi Shiwen did not know what they were thinking. At this time, he devoted himself to this battle. Judging by the outlook, Yi Shiwen completely suppressed the First Divine Lord, as if the First Divine Lord had no way to come back. However, only Yi Shiwen knew that the gap between them was not as great as it seemed. In other words, the gap was minute, since they were both at the peak of the Great Sage realm. But the current battle was showing an overwhelming advantage. This had to do with the Phoenix regeneration technique. Yi Shiwen recovered faster than the First Divine Lord. It was only a matter of the time gap. While recovered to peak, Yi Shiwen overwhelmed the First Divine Lord who had not recovered to the peak state. With the constant confrontation between the two of them, what was originally a minute gap had become an overwhelming advantage under Yi Ziwen's every little bit of hard work. Only then it developed into the situation of the so-called one-sided battle. But in fact, there was very little difference between them. If Yi Shiwen was not careful, he would sustain a serious injury too. Because of this, Yi Shiwen didn't dare to take it lightly at all. The First Divine Lord could reverse the situation if he was not careful. At this time, the First Divine Lord was also terrified. He did not expect that now things were going in this direction. This Yi Shiwen has too much resilience. An equal battleground had proceeded to such a situation. The First Divine Lord was frightened and secretly became more vigilant toward Yi Ziwen's means and rich combat experience. He was clear that his physical body was far superior to the average despite being incomparable to the Titan body of his second junior brother in the same rank. But now when facing Yi Shiwen, whose realm was far inferior to him, he lost his momentum in every aspect. In the battle between Yi Shiwen and the Second Divine Lord, he researched it very well and even learned a lot of data. The battle between Yi Shiwen and the Second Divine Lord lived up to the name of the battle among the peak physical bodies. Also, Yi Ziwen's strength in his physical body was revealed fully in that battle. However, he didn't expect Yi Shiwen to be advantageous in this confrontation despite the gap in the power realm. This physical body is really outrageous. Originally, the two were at equal footing. But after a few fights, Yi Shiwen preceded the fight in such a situation. Yi Ziwen's keen intuition in fights was one of a kind. He was definitely someone who emerged from murdering countless people and participated in countless battles. Only then he had developed such keen intuition in fights. All in all, there was only one conclusion. The First Divine Lord's recovery speed was not as fast as Yi Shiwen. Even if it was only a little slower, the accumulation of disadvantage could become a huge dead end for him. No, I can't go on like this. Otherwise, before Yi Shiwen beat him to death, he would be tortured to death already. The First Divine Lord realized he couldn't go on like this. He decided to commit another decisive move. His eyes were flushed red. Yi Shiwen, I'm going to send you to the afterlife. Suddenly there was a huge change in his body. A very thick hair began to grow all over his body. After a while, his body was covered with aquamarine hair. From a distance, it was like a wild hairy man. A terrible outlook. Among the thick hair, a pair of scarlet eyes suddenly spewed out harsh rays. His figure grew taller and bigger. The physical body that was mangled was recovered at a rate visibly with the naked eye. Yi Shiwen. The first divine lord growled in a low voice, like a beast. Yi Shiwen was suddenly taken aback. What is happening? He could even feel the power of the horrible bloodline of the first divine lord boiling, which was different from the feeling insinuated by the general's secret technique. Yi Shiwen, be careful. This person activated his bloodline power. The sound of Yi Mo's reminder appeared in Yi Ziwen's ear, but without his reminder, Yi Shiwen could also feel a dangerous aura surging forward. An extremely dangerous aura suddenly enveloped him. I didn't expect this first divine lord to be native clan, said Yi Mo. Yi Shiwen felt a sudden shock. Native clan, he had heard these two words for a long time. In the legend, before humans ruled this long starry sky, it was the world of native clan. After a long time, native clan was driven off from the overlord throne, but native clan was not extinct. In fact, the multiple disturbances under the starry sky were more or less related to native clan. Despite this, Yi Shiwen also saw native clan for the first time. This clan group that once competed with humans had a unified native clan statement. But this was not a unified clan group. There were different clan groups on each star, but later they were all targeted by humans. Since they were at odds with the same enemy, hence it came the name of native clan. Although Yi Shiwen did not know which native clan the first divine lord belonged to, he could already feel the horror and danger in the first divine lord. Suddenly, there were countless people in Yuan's sect who rioted. The word native clan might be strange to most of their disciples, but it was not strange to seniors. They were very clear with the meaning behind these two words. Once native clan appeared, it was a huge turmoil for the human world. No matter which force a human belonged to, there was only one word in treating the native clan: eradicate. It was the natural power of the victor. So you are the remnant of native clan? Yi Shiwen said awe-inspiringly. Anyway, for native clan, the clan group that caused human ancestors to die miserably. He became extra vigilant. You're really daring. At the moment since you expose yourself, you will be pursued relentlessly in the human world. Ha. The first divine lord laughed wildly, his voice was hoarse and wild. Since I exposed myself, then none of you can survive. Behind him, a lot of divine legion immediately surrounded Yi Shiwen and Yuan's sect, apparently intending to slaughter Yi Shiwen and Yuan's sect without leaving any trace. Even if they knew that the first divine lord was native clan, these people's beliefs did not shake at all, as if they were brainwashed. They had no second thoughts. All of you shall die. I will use your head to commemorate some of my dead brothers. You will die in the most miserable state ever. No, I will let your loved ones die in front of you. I want you to watch them die. You need to taste the pain of losing your loved ones. The first divine lord's face covered with green hair was sinister. The blood of the native clan that strengthened him made him more brutal and manic. Boom! The long saber in his hand instantly waved, and the world changed its color. The power of the yin and yang suddenly swept through the endless space like an ocean. The world suddenly turned gray. The vast yin and yang power was enough to let Sage Realm Master be strangled instantly. Yi Shiwen, be careful. Wolf Cub's reminder came from the side. At this time, he leapt to avoid the dangerous yin and yang power. Yi Ziwen's expression was stern. The first divine lord became so powerful after awakening the bloodline power. Yi Shiwen didn't know how much stronger the first divine lord than just now. Please go to read the latest chapters for free. Chapter 745. Great Sage Intermediate? Its overwhelming strength was intimidating. Wherever Saber Aura passed by, there would be a violent fluctuation in the space, boiling the space instantly. It was apparent how quick it was. The Saber Aura was still in the hands of the first divine lord, but it was already in front of Yi Shiwen on the next second. Even Yi Shiwen felt that the fierce Saber Aura that was approaching almost lay a cut on his face. Fortunately, Yi Ziwen's speed was not slow. He avoided the Saber Aura directly as the demon wings flapped in reflex. Boom! The Saber Aura split the vast sky and rushed into the chaos pool. It set off an endless storm in all directions. Chills crept upon Yi Ziwen's back. The Saber Aura was too abnormal. If he was careless, he would have been cut into half by it. The first Divine Lord had his strength escalated by one level after the Bloodline awakening. He was no way inferior to the realm of Great Sage Minor Mastery. Although this strength was inferior to the Enchant Temple Master, the pressure on Yi Shiwen did increase drastically. When he faced Soul Destruction Temple Master last time, he had no way to fight back. They were figures in Great Sage Great Mastery, which could almost enter the realm of the Great Sage Great Perfection. Such a character was not what Yi Shiwen could deal with now. Even if it was only the first Divine Lord who just temporarily ascended to Great Sage Minor Mastery, it felt like a whole level difference for Yi Shiwen. Don't think about fleeing today. It will be a massacre. Even all the 10 countries in the southeast region will be slaughtered. The first Divine Lord's eyes reflected its fanatic nature. He hated Yi Shiwen the most. Hence, he was determined to eliminate everything related to Yi Shiwen. The long saber in his hand made a beautiful trajectory, and countless gray saber aura occupied the sky. It was densely packed, enough to cut off Yi Zaiwen's path to retreat. The situation became more and more alarming. After Bloodline awakening, his strength suddenly improved a grade. With Yin and Yang Rainbow in his hands, the first Divine Lord exerted unprecedented power, far exceeding Yi Zaiwen's previous anticipation. Boom! The saber aura in the sky bombarded Yi Shiwen, exploding in great intensity in an instant. When all the saber aura exploded, the entire sky completely collapsed. The scene was terrifying even looking from a distance. The aftermath dispersed. Yi Shiwen, who was in the center, was in a troubled state, despite having the protection of Gilded Tyrant Body and Tianyuan Mirror. The saber aura just now had inflicted a huge wound directly on his body with the blood splashed around him. White bones were visible too. If it was an average person, he would have been slashed into half already. Great Sage Minor Mastery was so powerful. Yi Shiwen could not help but gasp in astonishment. While using the Phoenix regeneration technique to rejuvenate the wounds on his body, he had to expel the saber aura lingering around the wound as well. Yi Shiwen, you can't go on like this. Even if you have the Gilded Tyrant Body and the protection of Tianyuan Mirror, you will be soon killed by him. Yi Mo reminded. Yi Shiwen nodded but didn't expect that this first Divine Lord would become so powerful after Bloodline awakening. It was imaginable how difficult it was for human ancestors to compete with these native clans for living space. Great Sage Minor Mastery, it had exceeded the limit that Yi Shiwen could handle. Let's fight. I can try to break through to the Great Sage Intermediate on the spot. With that, I should have a chance to still fight with him. Yi Shiwen said and licked off the bloodstain at the corner of his face. If Yi Shiwen was just a Great Sage initial, he had no way to contend with the first Divine Lord who went through Bloodline awakening. For today's event, there was only one way. I have to break through into Great Sage Intermediate. Although Yi Shiwen had just entered the Great Sage not long ago, he had already entered the peak of the Great Sage Initial. During the Retribution, he confronted Heaven's Retribution and absorbed all the power of Heaven's Retribution into his body. Hence, despite having just recently attained the Great Sage Realm, Yi Zaiwen's strength had reached the Great Sage Realm initial peak. Otherwise, he had no way to contend with the first Divine Lord and suppressed the first Divine Lord at a disadvantage. Yi Shiwen originally planned to find a place to finish the breakthrough after settling down a Yuan sect. In this increasingly chaotic time, there was not enough time for Yi Shiwen to have a breakthrough in his realm. Hence, he really had to muster all he could to let himself have a breakthrough. Behind Yi Shiwen appeared jade-like rays, forming the shape of a tree. Yi Shiwen instantly entered the state of sudden enlightenment. In just a days, Yi Shiwen progressed in his enlightenment as though he managed to establish with the Tao. This was because the Mingxin ancient tree was activated. During this time, it had directly rooted in the dragon vein and absorbed enough nutrients. The Mingxin ancient tree grew faster and faster. Relatively speaking, Yi Zaiwen's grasp on Tao would improve over time. This was the fundamental reason why Yi Shiwen could continue the breakthrough spree. All the wounds on his body were recovering at an exaggerated speed, and the qi in his body was strengthened as time passed. Let me see how many times your healing technique can save you. The first Divine Lord also saw the abnormality on Yi Shiwen, but he did not treat it seriously. He just considered it as Yi Zaiwen's last struggle before his imminent demise. Even if you have a supreme secret healing technique, it is nothing in front of absolute strength. Initially, he was worried that Yi Shiwen would attempt escape, but now he was not worried at all. As long as Yuan's sect was still there, it was impossible for Yi Shiwen to escape. When Yuan's sect was crushed, then the first Divine Lord had no way to chase up if Yi Shiwen decided to escape. Now as long as Yuan's sect still exists, Yi Shiwen would be trapped here obediently. Although the first Divine Lord seemed like a maniac, he hadn't gone crazy. After he finished his sentence, he had already appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. He slashed the long saber in his hand directly at Yi Shiwen. Boom! 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 The battle between the two sides became more and more intense in the sky. Although Yi Shiwen fought very bravely and was not hurt, he was completely suppressed. His strength was worse than that of the first Divine Lord. Yi Shiwen was struggling in an uphill battle. Fortunately, the first Divine Lord was also frightened by Yi Zaiwen's madness. Yi Shiwen fought as if he didn't care about death or injury at all. Yi Shiwen just fought violently. He would injure the opponent in exchange for sustaining injuries on himself. This situation made the first Divine Lord hesitate and be more restrained in the fights. Otherwise, the first Divine Lord would be injured fatally even if he were to kill Yi Shiwen. His physical body was not as strong as Yi Shiwen. After Bloodline awakening, he only improved his cultivation. At this time, Yi Shiwen was in the state of enlightenment. Although he was still fighting with the first Divine Lord, he devoted most of his spiritual senses in the enlightenment. With the help of the Mingxin ancient tree, Yi Shiwen easily attained the existence of Tao. He was indulging in the free flow of Tao. He even forgot that he was still fighting the first Divine Lord, and even forgot all kinds of dangers. The power of Yi Shiwen was also advancing at a slow but consistent speed towards the Great Sage Intermediate. This was entirely due to the Mingxin ancient tree. However, the first Divine Lord was not a fool, and soon discovered Yi Zaiwen's anomaly. He immediately understood that Yi Shiwen was in the stage of breakthrough. He was shocked and angry. He was mad that Yi Shiwen disregarded him as he decided to go through a breakthrough at this time. It was simply provocative to undergo a breakthrough while at the same time battling with him. On the other hand, he was shocked that Yi Shiwen, who was now just the Great Sage Initial, was already so terrible. If he was allowed to break through into the Great Sage Intermediate, it would be devastating. The first Divine Lord was determined. He had to strike when the opponent was still weak. Yi Shiwen indulged in breakthrough undoubtedly was at the weakest time. This time was a good time to kill him. Thinking of this, he immediately pounced forward to behead Yi Shiwen. Although Yi Shiwen was in the enlightenment state, he was not unaware as he reserved a hint of spirit for the battle. This allowed the battle to happen by virtue of instinct. When fighting with instinct, he even became more agile than before. Yi Shiwen was struck again and again, then recovered again with Phoenix regeneration technique, and continued the battle. With the deepening of his enlightenment, his strength was also rising. The number of injuries was gradually decreasing. There were signs of fighting with the first Divine Lord already. The first Divine Lord was inexplicably horrified. He naturally knew that this was the result of Yi Zaiwen's enlightenment. Yi Shiwen continued to perceive the Tao and continued to improve his strength. He was alarmed and could not let Yi Shiwen go on like this. When the first Divine Lord was devoted to delivering a full-blown attack, Yi Zaiwen's vigor escalated all of a sudden. As compared to the previous self, Yi Shiwen was entirely different. The qi in his body also instantly boiled up. He suddenly felt that Yi Zaiwen's strength had suddenly increased by one level. He has attained the breakthrough. After breakthrough to the Great Sage Intermediate, Yi Shiwen suddenly awakened from the state of sudden enlightenment. He felt that the qi flowed freely in his body. There was no trace of hindrance. The bottleneck he felt when he was in Great Sage initial peak was long gone. Unless Yi Shiwen reaches the Great Sage Intermediate peak again, he would come into contact with another bottleneck again. As he broke into the Great Sage Intermediate, his entire body was undergoing rapid transformation. His body was transforming at a terrifying speed, becoming more powerful. "Fight me." Yi Shiwen opened his eyes, and the wounds he had sustained after fighting with the first Divine Lord by instincts were recovering at an alarming rate. The vigor in his body continued to rise. Please go to read the latest chapters for free. Chapter 746, Slaying the First Divine Lord. Yi Ziwen's tyrant body had a golden luster on it. He was like a battle god made of gold. Under this layer of golden light, there was a layer of blood-red luster which was hard to distinguish if one did not look for it carefully. This red luster was like golden luster's vassals. Stepping into the Great Sage Intermediate gave Yi Shiwen a fundamental leap in strength. Although it was only one step difference, it couldn't be crossed by the Great Sage Initial. "You're courting death." The first Divine Lord took the first move. He had to take the lead while Yi Shiwen was not yet fully capable of harnessing the power of the Great Sage Intermediate. That was his only hope to defeat Yi Shiwen. The long saber aura was transformed into a yin and yang catalog, which came down from the sky and suppressed all directions. The first Divine Lord finally went all out. In the yin and yang catalog, every trace of yin and yang power contained a domineering saber aura capable of destroying the world. "Glad you call the shots." Yi Shiwen shouted. He just broke into the Great Sage Intermediate, and he was in need to have an opponent to hone himself. He launched his move. In an instant, his fist was like a huge star. He bombarded it just like a comet hitting a planet. It brought up unparalleled momentum and stirred up vibrations in all directions. Boom! The confrontation between the two terrifying masters instantly shattered the world. The place where saber aura and the stars collided instantly burst a huge crack. Among the cracks, countless forces boiled in it. It was twisted into a turmoil by two completely different power. The shockwave erupted from the fight between the two, swept out in all directions. Wolf Cub shielded off the shockwave from Yuan sect. Although Wolf Cub might not be the opponent of any one of the two, it was more than capable of blocking off the shockwaves. However, those Divine Legion were not so lucky. As the shockwave swept out, the whole legion was torn apart. Just this one confrontation, many warriors were killed simply because they were too close. What a great fight! Yi Shiwen cheered and once again launched another attack as fast as a meteor. The first Divine Lord was anxious. He knew he could not continue the battle among his Divine Legion again. Otherwise, the Divine Legion which he had mustered so much effort to build would be devastated. But the first Divine Lord had no control over it. As the saying goes, strike the opponent when he is weak. Yi Shiwen had the upper hand, hence he would definitely not show any mercy. He bombarded Shattered Star Fist repeatedly on the first Divine Lord. In the face of Yi Ziwen's attack, the first Divine Lord did not dare to underestimate it. Although Yi Shiwen had just stepped into the Great Sage Intermediate and the foundation was not really concrete, Yi Shiwen was still advantageous in facing the first Divine Lord who had his strength soared with Bloodline awakening. One punch. Another punch. Yet another punch. The first Divine Lord was frightened to find that every punch of Yi Shiwen actually seemed to be improving. In fact, Yi Shiwen consolidated a portion of his realm in every punch. He had an increasing grasp on mobilizing the terrifying strength of a Great Sage Intermediate. In other words, Yi Shiwen was getting stronger and stronger, and his power was diminishing. He could only temporarily possess such terrible strength by stimulating the blood of his ancestors. Even though it was stronger than the ordinary secret technique with a longer duration, the time limit was still there. He had wasted many times in the previous brawl with Yi Shiwen. Initially, it was not a big deal. He had the confidence to slay Yi Shiwen before the secret technique's effect diminished. Contrarily to his expectation, Yi Shiwen just attained a breakthrough. This made his original chances of success suddenly reduced to nothing. Saving his own life would be a huge challenge now. He had never expected that the situation would develop into this. He originally wanted to take revenge on Yi Shiwen. But it turned out that he was just Yi Ziwen's prey. Haha, Yi Shiwen. Yes, that's it, beat him up and kill him. The wolf cub below saw Yi Shiwen once again gain the upper hand, and immediately cheered. Finally, Yi Zaiwen's every punch stopped the advancement in the power realm. He had finally consolidated his power realm. After consolidating his power realm, Yi Shiwen did not have any reservations. He mustered all his strength in hunting the first Divine Lord. It's time to end this. Divine Legion shouldn't exist in the world, let alone the remnants of your native clan. Yi Shiwen snorted. Native clan and the human clan had been fighting for many years. It was already impossible to distinguish between right and wrong. The turmoil in the human clan, however, had something to do with the native clan. Of course, the native clan would definitely play a role in them, causing many innocent lives to be sacrificed. Therefore, Yi Shiwen, like most people, did not have a good opinion of native clan. Boom! The two exchanged blows again. Yi Zaiwen's increasingly powerful attack instantly fell down, just like the collision of stars. The huge and terrifying power swept out in an instant. Poof! The first Divine Lord couldn't contend with the gap in strength. Yi Shiwen broke most of the first Divine Lord's bones in the chest with the constant bombardment of punches. It appeared to be mangled. Green blood splashed in the sky. The first Divine Lord was thrown away for a distance before coming to a halt. His vigor also seemed to break apart by this fist. The green hair on the body also fully retracted into his body in a moment, and the bloodline power faded. His face was abnormally pale, and he knelt in the air. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. The first Divine Lord growled unwillingly. He had painstakingly prepared for so long, and yet he still fell short. I haven't established an enduring foundation. I haven't revived my clan. I haven't avenged my brother. This can't be happening. Divine Lord. The Divine Legion, who had never been shaken, panicked and rushed towards Yi Shiwen to save the Divine Lord in their hearts. However, would Yi Shiwen give them mercy? The storm wing behind him fanned around, instantly form a storm domain that separated them with the first Divine Lord for a distance. Revive native clan? Yi Shiwen sneered. This idea stirred up countless turmoil, but he would not say much to the opponent. He stepped out directly to the first Divine Lord. 5 fingers squeezed into a fist, it was bombarded alongside the terrifying light lingered around it. Yi Shiwen was too fast. The first Divine Lord had no time to react. His previous injuries slowed down his reaction speed. Poof! The first Divine Lord was blasted into the air by Yi Shiwen, screaming agonizingly as his flesh broke apart. All signs of life escaped from his body. Yi Shiwen was relieved. After he killed the first Divine Lord, he solved a serious problem. With the death of the first Divine Lord, the entire Divine Legion collapsed like a dam break. Those Divine Legions fell from the sky one after another. 10,000 people died in an instant. Yi Shiwen could not help but take a breath. The first Divine Lord had controlled them with a secret technique. As long as the first Divine Lord died, they would definitely die. This kind of malicious means was absolutely rare. 10,000 lives were buried alongside the first Divine Lord. The first Divine Lord was definitely cruel. Although the first Divine Lord was from a different clan, the Divine Legion was after all composed of humans. For him, they could die at any time. He disregarded their importance and imposed a secret technique on them. No wonder these Divine Legions would rather die and rush over to save the first Divine Lord. It turns out that they knew that if the first Divine Lord died, they would also be buried with him. Death is their only path. However, it also solved a big problem for Yi Shiwen. The Divine Legion composed of 10,000 troops were elites. It would not be easy to eliminate them. Now they all die in one shot. It saved Yi Shiwen countless efforts. Yi Shiwen dashed out like a cluster of lights. At this time, there was a burst of cheers from Yuan's sect. All the people of Yuan's sect felt like a new lease of life after the disaster. They thought they were dead, but they didn't expect Wolf Cub and Yi Shiwen would appear afterward and eliminate the enemies, allowing Yuan's sect to escape the calamity. Although there were still damages, it was still better than getting completely wiped out. Ha, good job. Wolf Cub laughed exaggeratedly, seemingly quite proud as if this was his achievement. Considering its consistent shameless nature, Yi Shiwen was already used to it. Under my wise leadership, he finally attained a great victory. Shut up. Yi Shiwen directly gave it a slap. It is all my hard work. What nonsense with wise leadership. Yi Shiwen, you're a bastard. I'm going to bite you. You just beat me when I met you. Wolf Cub was annoyed by Yi Zaiwen's slap. It lunged itself toward Yi Shiwen. However, the only result would be getting slapped away by Yi Shiwen. For a while, Wolf Cub flew to Yi Zaiwen's side with frustration and said in its mouth, "Damn Yi Shiwen. Just you wait. My cultivation will exceed you one day. I will kick you around like a ball." Yi Shiwen ignored this naturally. Do you want to surpass me? Keep dreaming. When did you come out of Thousands Demon Beasts Island? Asked Yi Shiwen. Just recently. Wolf Cub said a little angrily, apparently quite dissatisfied with Yi Zaiwen's 2 slaps. Don't you say that you will come out after attaining Sage Realm? Yi Shiwen asked. The duo landed extremely fast. They were at Yuan Sek's door in a glimpse. It's that senior. He said that the world is not going to be peaceful. He just wants to keep me in. Supposedly, I can only come out after attaining Transcendent Realm. But I'm smart. I just escaped, said Wolf Cub proudly. Yi Shiwen felt helpless. This Wolf Cub never does things with logic. However, the worries in his heart were deepened. Even Senior Munu of Thousands Demon Beasts Island felt that the world was going to be chaotic. Wolf Cub could only protect itself if it was in the Transcendent Realm. It was conceivable that this turmoil would be huge, leading to many things happening. Even the unpredictable Thousands Demon Beasts Island with secret origins had sealed off its island to avoid risks. Please go to read the latest chapters for free. Chapter 747. Riddles in Origin. Thousands Demon Beasts Island was already an unpredictable place in Yi Zaiwen's hearts. This still applied despite him already attaining the Great Sage Realm. The powerful Beast Emperor was intimidating every time he thought about it. Even if Yi Shiwen was a great sage now, he knew he would be easily defeated in the face of Beast Emperor. Although they said Beast Emperor was dead for countless years with its last spiritual senses shattered on Thousands Demon Beasts Island, who knows if there was any backup plan. But, for such a distinguished place like Thousands Demon Beasts Island, they treated this turmoil seriously as though it was a great threat. It was conceivable how this situation was much more serious than what Yi Shiwen anticipated. But in any case, Yi Shiwen was very happy when he resolved the threat in Yuan Sect and reunited with Wolf Cub again. The duo entered Yuan Sect. Upon seeing Yi Kongming was among the Yuan Sect seniors, they quickly stepped forward to greet each of them. Although Yi Zaiwen's strength was far greater than these people were also his teachers and colleagues of his father. There was no need to make them bear ill feelings because of petty matters. They might not be able to do anything to Yi Shiwen, but it wouldn't do good if they vented on his father. Yi Shiwen followed the seniors and went straight to Yuan Sect's innermost meeting hall. Yi Zaiwen's migration of Yuan Sect still required the consent of many seniors from Yuan Sect. In the meeting hall, all attendees were seated. Father, Yi Shiwen said, the situation is too chaotic right now. Anything could happen. Yi Kongming nodded. Although they were far away from true martial school, they still knew the emergent school was about to invade. After all, despite this matter being sudden, the omen was also very obvious. It had been a few years, which was enough to spread the news from true martial school throughout the South region. Just like everyone else, the Yuan Sect was caught off guard by the unexpected emergent school's invasion. There are many masters of emergent school, as well as armored horsemen from South Barbarian. I don't think it will take much longer for the villains in demon-worshipping religion to make some moves. It will be super chaotic, said Yi Shiwen. Hence, I propose a Yuan Sect to move to the Outer Starry region first to avoid the war. We will only come back when peace returns. Yi Zaiwen's words carried another hidden meaning. If true martial school had no way to calm the situation down, then the Yuan Sect wouldn't come back. Everyone was somewhat agreeable to it in their mind. Yuan Sect was also a subordinate force of true martial school. Emergent school might decide to recruit them or possibly eliminate them. But now Emergent School's attitude was not obvious. Everyone had no insights about it. Most importantly, this strategy was to allow them to survive until the war ends. If there was another force like Divine Legion and decided to besiege the Yuan sect like just now, it would most possibly be a complete annihilation for Yuan sect. Yuan sect was fragile. Just a mere great sage or even a sage master could eradicate the Yuan sect. They could protect their foundation only during peaceful times. When the chaotic flames of war struck, true martial school wouldn't be able to take care of them. Everyone heard Yi Zaiwen's opinion and it came to them as a good decision. They did actually think about it. However, the situation in the starry sky was unlike true martial domain. Only the truth master could survive in the starry sky. Furthermore, the most important prerequisite was to not encounter any powerful star beast. Unfortunately, among the hundreds of thousands of Yuan sect disciples, there was a scarcity of truth disciples. Although the presence of Yi Shiwen and Qi Fifan got a lot of resources for Yuan sect from true martial school, the number of truth disciples was only about 1,000 people. Although Yuan sect was much stronger than the past, there were still many people not attaining the truth power realm yet. They had no way to leave unless they threw away their foundation and abandoned hundreds of thousands of disciples. But now if Yi Shiwen played a role in it, it would be different. Yi Zaiwen's strength was clearly in the great sage realm. In the starry sky, Yi Shiwen could sit at the top among the forces stationed with the great sage master. It would be no problem to build up a territory. No matter which star they looked for or which territory they marked, it would be easy without any trouble at all. For Yi Shiwen now, it was not difficult to create a space suitable for human survival just like Wind Dragon City or the like. The opinions put forward by Yi Shiwen were fully accepted by the crowds in Yuan sect. The entire Yuan sect immediately started its operation. Countless branches of Yuan sect disciples all over the Great Yu Empire began to gather together. All goods that could be carried were brought along. Yi Shiwen would take the entire Yuan sect mountains and move them away. For them, it was unimaginable and godlike ability. For Yi Shiwen, it was something doable. After finalizing some details, Yi Shiwen did not leave but followed Yi Kongming back to his home in Yuan sect. Right now, the Yi family had become a big clan in Yuan sect. Decades had passed, Yuan sect headquarters had also taken root. Mother! Yi Shiwen followed Yi Kongming back to the courtyard. Mother Xiachuan Xue, who had received the news, had already been waiting for him. When she saw Yi Shiwen, she was immediately excited and tears fell. Decades of time did not leave any traces on her face. It was just difficult for her to suppress the excitement to see this young boy who she had not seen for decades. The last time Yi Shiwen came back was decades ago. For such a long time, even her grandchildren had become adults, let alone Yi Shiwen. Although Yi Zaiwen's temperament had long been different from the past, there had been no change in her heart. Yi Shiwen quickly approached and gave his greetings. "You stupid brat finally comes back." Xiachuan Xue was excited and suddenly gave her lecture. In this regard, Yi Shiwen could only give a bitter smile, listening to the mother's lecture. He glanced at the eldest brother, Yi Feng, and the eldest sister-in-law, Sun Yuan. Second sister Yi Ruxue had her husband, Qin Yan, a tall and handsome warrior who stood beside her. Yuan sect had undergone major changes when Yi Shiwen last came back, so the wedding had been delayed. Now that decades had passed, they had all married already. Although Yi Ruxue was a housewife, she was as naughty as ever. She pulled a comical face as she saw her brother forced to admit defeat in front of her mother. It was just like she returned to the years of her youth decades ago, without much difference. In these decades, their strength had also greatly improved. All of them had basically stepped into half-step legendary. They were also eligible to join True Martial School. However, True Martial School hadn't opened the mountain gate yet for many years. With another decade, they could also be among the top experts. Yi Shiwen was supposed to be with them, but Yi Shiwen went to True Martial School one step ahead. Over the past few decades, he had fundamental changes as though he went through a reincarnation, which was naturally completely different from the past. Then, Yi Shiwen moved his gaze to Yi Shu, the book Demon Beast. It had also entered the legendary realm quite early, reaching a point where it never dared to imagine before. At this time, the book Demon Beast looked at Yi Shiwen, who returned with excitement. If there was no Yi Shiwen, it would still live a passive life in the library as a little book Demon Beast. How could it attain the status right now? With its strength and its relationship with Yi Shiwen, it had long been ranked as supreme elder in Yuan among the sects. Right now, it managed the entire Yuan sect's library. Then, Yi Shiwen glanced at the two juniors, Yi Ning and Yi Ningxuan. Over the past few decades, they had also grown into young masters from the original little brat. They had entered the truth power realm after becoming the true legatee disciple in Yuan sect. They were labeled geniuses in Yuan sect. They were very talented and stronger than their elder brother and second sister. Plus, with the help of the dragon marrow left by Yi Shiwen, their breakthrough in cultivation was smooth. In the future, their achievements might be higher than that of the elder brother and second sister. The second sister and the second brother-in-law did not bear any children in recent years. Hence, the youngest junior of the Yi family were still these two little brats. At this time, they obediently came to greet Yi Shiwen. On that night, the Yi family had a banquet. Due to its nature being a family banquet, only the Yi family members were present. However, the atmosphere was very lively. It was especially true for Yi Shiwen, who had not returned for decades. He missed his family members a lot. Everyone seemed to have something to say at every moment. Not to mention Wolf Cub was like a jester who livens up the atmosphere of the whole family banquet. After the banquet, Yi Shiwen was called into the study by Yi Kongming. Yi Kongming deities said seriously, "There is one thing which I think I should tell you now." Yi Shiwen was surprised. He sat upright and still on the ground with his ears opened. Although Yi Kongming was unsmiling usually, there were rarely such serious moments. "Actually, you are not my blood-related child. You should already know about it, right?" Yi Kongming looked at Yi Shiwen and said. Yi Shiwen nodded. He was not Yi Kongming's biological son. At that time, many people at Mountain Qingfeng knew about it, let alone Yi Shiwen. It was not a secret. Basically, the whole family knew it. Of course, Yi Shiwen knew that. It was just that he had not come here for so many years, and he almost forgot about it. For him, the parents in this world were Yi Kongming and Xia Chuanxue. As for the biological parents whom he had never met, he felt no attachment at all. Although we have been treating you as a biological son over the years, you are still not blood-related in the end. Yi Kongming said. Obviously he also knew that Yi Shiwen already knew. Originally, I think your talents are mediocre and your future achievements are limited. For some things, I just want to bury it for a lifetime. Yi Shiwen raised his ears, and he came into a shock deep down his heart. Chapter 748. Gratitude for giving birth? Gratitude for upbringing. An uncontrollable shiver spread instantly from the heart to the whole body. It was the tension and tremor that came from the depth of the soul. The memories of the predecessor before Yi Shiwen took over the body had resurfaced. Now with the passage of time, Yi Shiwen and the predecessor had become more and more integrated. The understanding of the predecessor's memory was no longer limited to the form of just watching a movie. Rather, the two had fused together. He was his predecessor. There was no difference. The two of them had already integrated into one. Typically, Yi Shiwen would prioritize his own memories, but at certain specific moments, the emotions that were pressed to the bottom of the heart would explode all of a sudden. For example, when it came to the mystery of the predecessor's origin, the sour feeling instantly occupied all of the heart. All of the childhood memories surged into the mind. His predecessor had long known that he was not Yi Kongming and Xia Chengce's biological matter. Although everyone in the family treated him well, he was not the biological son. Sometimes when he saw Yi Ruxue, Yi Kongming, and Xia Chuanxue playing around, he would still feel uncomfortable. Although he also wanted to ask about his biological parents, he could not bear to ask every time, fearing that this would ruin this warm family. Yi Kongming never mentioned this matter in front of him, so that even if Yi Shiwen wanted to ask, he had no way to start. However, Yi Kongming finally decided to talk about this matter. I'm acquainted with your biological father incidentally. At that time, I was in my 20s. I was traveling in the Great Yu Empire, and I met your father and mother unexpectedly. They also seemed to be traveling, seemingly adventuring the world," said Yi Kongming. Yi Shiwen listened quietly. He opened his mouth abruptly and asked, "Can I ask, what kind of people are they?" This was the deepest desire in his heart, hoping to know what kind of person his father and mother were. "Speaking of it, I only know that your father and I have the same surname Yi. He is named Yi Junshan. This is what brought us together. I just entered Xiantian not long after. Your father and mother were like immortals for me. I can't even identify their cultivation." Yi Kongming smiled a bit bitterly. When he had just stepped into Xiantian, he was spirited and felt that he was number in the world. He did not expect that he was nothing in front of Yi Junshan. He didn't even see through Yi Junshan cultivation from beginning to end. He could only generalize their cultivation in the stage of immortals. Yi Junshan. Yi Shiwen was deeply shocked in his heart. Yi Junshan, this is the name of my biological father. Yi Junshan. This was the first time he heard about his biological parents. We talked a lot. Although your father's cultivation is really high, he is not arrogant. Later, after we said goodbye, I returned to Mountain Qingfeng and married your mother. Yi Kongming whispered. Yi Shiwen knew that the mother he said here was Xia Chuanxue, not his biological mother. After another few years, when we all forgot about this matter, your father suddenly found us and brought along you, who was a baby at that time. He asked us to take care of you. Then he left in a hurry. Yi Kongming continued. A lot of people saw this at the time, so Mountain Qingfeng actually knew that you weren't my own. You have suffered a lot of grievances over the years. You must be desperate to ask it. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt that his nose was itchy, and the tears in his eyes instantly flooded. All the grievances in these years had suddenly flowed into his heart, but Yi Shiwen was not the former young man now. His mood calmed down in just a moment. Do you know why I never talked about it? Because your father seemed like an immortal to me. Even now that I have entered legendary, I still think your father's cultivation is really profound despite thinking about it currently. At that time, he left in a hurry. Although he didn't say anything, I knew something. He encountered a very difficult matter that might threaten the life of the whole family, so he had to give you up to me. Yi Kongming said, a thing that even your father's cultivation can't cope with, not to mention for us, it must be very dangerous. Moreover, after that, your father never appeared again. Hence, I think something definitely happens to your father. Yi Kongming slowly speculated. Yi Ziwen's heart trembled again. When he heard Yi Kongming just now, he had figured out a thing or two. Since Yi Junshan handed him over to Yi Kongming to raise him, then something must have happened to him since he did not come back after so many years have passed. Otherwise, the situation would not end up like this. But when Yi Kongming finally heard this, he still felt very uncomfortable. Your talent seemed mediocre in the past. Xiantian seems to be your final stop, so I plan to bring this secret into the coffin and never tell you in my life. Although it is cruel to you, your father must hope that you can live a good life. Even if I tell you, nothing can be solved. Yi Kongming said, I never thought that you are his son no matter what. You even completely surpass us old guys and become famous. You also reached the cultivation of the great sage realm. Your future is even more limitless. I think I can no longer hide some things from you like this. You have the right to know your father's matter. If you have the ability in the future, it will be great if you can find your parents. Are there any clues left by them? Yi Shiwen asked. If he only knew that his biological father was called Yi Junshan, then it would be tantamount to finding a needle in the sea. Under the sky, there were trillions of human beings. Not to mention, there would be duplicate names. If Yi Shiwen wanted to find a person with only names, it would be better off for him to just give up. Your father didn't say anything, but just left a jade pendant. He only said if you can find Qishan one day, then naturally you can find him with this jade pendant. Yi Kongming grabbed a jade pendant from Void and handed it to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen took the jade. It was as big as a palm. Its whole body was green and round, but it was just 1 finger thick. There was an unknown vicious beast carved in the center of the jade. Although it was only a jade carving, it was seemingly alive. Yi Shiwen glanced at it, and almost felt like a vicious beast rushed into his mind. Yi Shiwen only felt that an inexplicable force suddenly boiled all over the body. Boom! The qi in Yi Ziwen's body was as though it had been invaded. In reflex, they formed a barrier. The mini-universe in Yi Ziwen's dantian shone with unimaginable light. It instantly suppressed this inexplicable power down. Just a moment later, the power retreated into Yi Ziwen's body. Yi Shiwen was drenched with cold sweat all of a sudden. The uncontrollable power just now scared him, and he didn't know where it came from. He never felt this power before. It felt enormous and boundless. Yi Shiwen scanned the whole body with his spiritual senses again, but never found the sudden burst of energy just now, as if the incident had never appeared. Is that just an illusion? No, this is definitely not an illusion. Yi Shiwen could feel that the power just now had completely overwhelmed him. Although it was violent, it felt very dear, which gave off a tender vibe later on. Hence, it should not hurt Yi Shiwen in any way. Since Yi Shiwen couldn't identify it further, he could only put down the idea of finding the energy source. It was really not suitable to pursue this matter at this time. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen could sense that the energy had no intention of hurting him. With that, Yi Shiwen put this matter aside. Little one, what's wrong? Yi Kongming asked with concern. The changes in Yi Ziwen's body were too fast just now. Yi Kongming could only feel a terrible power explode in Yi Ziwen's body for a moment, but he didn't know what happened. Moreover, he also did not know that the power disappeared in an instant, rendering him even more puzzled. It's okay. It's fine. Yi Shiwen said reluctantly with a smile, but he had more doubts in his heart. He made up his mind and wanted to find Yi Mo later on. Yi Mo was a knowledgeable old monster. He could have it to help identify the origin of this jade pendant, and also how could it suddenly awaken the energy in his body that was never noticed. On this kind of problem, Yi Ziwen's lack of knowledge was the greatest weakness. This kind of knowledge and insights needed time to accumulate. It was completely irrelevant to the increment in strength. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen was always accompanied by a well-informed and knowledgeable Yi Mo. With its reminder, Yi Shiwen would not miss many adventures. Hey, this thing may stimulate your cultivation, Yi Kongming said, seeing Yi Ziwen's down mood. He thought Yi Shiwen acted as such right now because of his biological parent's story. With that, Yi Kongming felt concerned in his heart. No matter Yi Ziwen's origin, he had long regarded Yi Shiwen as his own son. Father, I'm fine. Whether I'm your own or not, you and my mother are my eternal parents in my heart. Your kindness in my upbringing will never be forgotten. Yi Shiwen stood up, cupped his hand and said, regardless of who his biological parents were, Yi Kongming and Xia Chuanxue, who raised him, were far from important in his heart. They said blood is thicker than water. However, Yi Kongming and Xia Chuanxue were of utmost importance in Yi Ziwen's heart. Okay. Yi Kongming said happily, your mother will be happy knowing that you resolves the knot in your heart. Chapter 749, Life and Death Battle in an Independent Small Yard. Yi Shiwen held the jade pendant that Yi Kongming had given him in his hand. He played with the jade pendant in his hand while feeling the warmth of it in his grasp. It was a natural warmth that was distinctive with body heat. Only a jade pendant like this could offer such soothing power. Yi Shiwen could feel that the jade pendant was circulating a warm power in his body. Even you can't identify the origin of this pendant? Yi Shiwen asked. Beside him, Yi Mo stood on his shoulders, frowning and shaking his head. I don't have any clue. If it is from demon domain, there is very little that can hide from me. However, if it is not something from demon domain, then I'm certain that your father should not be a normal person. Chishan, isn't that in Ancient Barrens? The wolf cub beside him, which nestled in the corner, opened his eyes lazily and said slowly, you know something about it? Yi Shiwen turned to look at Wolf Cub. Ancient Barrens, where is that place? Yi Mo on the side was also surprised. Ancient Barrens, how is it possible? You all know the place? Yi Shiwen turned to the two. Where is Ancient Barrens? If it's really from there, then you should stop thinking about your biological father, at least in a short amount of time. Yi Emo said with a bitter smile. I'm not very familiar with that place. Demon Domain's dwellers have never entered Ancient Barrens. The understanding of Ancient Barrens is naturally not as good as the Beast Clan. The so-called Ancient Barrens are the origin of all universes, the highest point of all planes. It is a vast expanse of continent. Almost all kinds of clans can be found in it. It is also the origin of all kinds of clans. All the clan groups who want to dominate the world would stage their battleground there. Yi Emo chatted a few words, and outlined the place as a barren land staged for warfare. How to go to Ancient Barrens? Yi Shiwen was faintly excited. Under this starry sky, he felt that he had almost reached the top. Although he had just stepped into the Great Sage, he could feel that the Great Sage realm was far from peak. For elite warriors, the Great Sage realm was just the beginning. Those who were more informed were merely transcendent realm warriors, and they seemed to hide themselves in the dark more often. According to Yi Emo, their strength was not outstanding among the transcendent realm warriors. Not to mention the terrible masters in the demon domain whom he knew. Yi Shiwen originally planned to enter the demon domain after reaching transcendent realm, continue to fight and continue to improve his strength. For him, this was the only thing that could interest him. Decades had passed. Even his parents on Earth should die of old age already. Yi Shiwen did not have the strong feeling about returning to the Earth again. Climbing the martial arts peak had become the biggest pursuit of his life. He wanted to reach the peak, constantly defeating stronger enemies. For him, he had demon skills. With the help of aura convergence martial art, it would not be a problem to disguise as Demon Clan. But now Yi Emo's words had opened another stage for him. Maybe he did not need to go to Demon Domain, but could get stronger at the Ancient Barrens continent. At present, this starry sky does not have a path that leads to the Ancient Barrens continent. It seems to be sealed, so I did not mention it to you. I originally wanted you to visit the Demon Domain after you entered the Transcendent Realm. Then, you can reach the Ancient Barrens continent with the passage in the Demon Domain. Yi Emo said. He originally sought to nurture Yi Shiwen into a demon king. But no matter what he said, Yi Shiwen was unmoved. Yi Emo could only give up. Although this starry sky had no way to visit the Ancient Barrens mainland, Yi Shiwen was not disappointed. Anyway, it seemed viable to access Ancient Barrens via Demon Domain's passage too. Yi Shiwen seemed to have a further grasp on the situation. No wonder I have never heard about the Ancient Barrens continent. I've been in an unreceptive place for too long, so I do not have much knowledge. Luckily, I have Wolf Club with a mysterious origin and an old monster like Yi Emo. They are my only access to knowledge. Yi Shiwen held the jade pendant in his hand, and he became more and more resolute. No matter if it was to search for his biological parents or to accomplish his dream in improving himself, he had to visit the Ancient Barrens continent. Of course, this was not for now. The true martial school's crisis was not over yet. His strength was inadequate too. He had to wait until Star Beast Avatar attained Transcendent Realm. There might have deities in Ancient Barrens continent. This dazzled Yi Shiwen even more. If there were deities, then they must be on the Ancient Barrens. After having a goal, Yi Shiwen was more motivated. He did not want to delay further. 3 days later, Yuan sect had sorted out the logistics for migration. Every member and branches scattered around the world had united in the main headquarters. To further avoid any accidents, Yi Shiwen did not hesitate and directly utilized his power to lift up the entire Yuan sect mountains. The original position of the Yuan sect mountains seemed to be missing a huge place. Of course, although Yi Shiwen was extraordinary in strength, he could not take the entire Yuan sect mountains into the universe. He had no such capability, nor was he the legends who could move mountains and fill the sea. But it would not be a problem to put them in Tianyuan Mirror. After putting Yuan sect mountains in Tianyuan Mirror, Yi Shiwen flew directly into the starry sky. He found a lone star, put Yuan sect mountains on it, and placed arrays to stabilize Yuan sect mountains. There were so many remote and unpopulated planets in the cosmic sky, but many environments were very harsh. They were not suitable for human survival. However, this was not a difficult issue for Yi Shiwen to tackle. It was entirely possible to modify the climate in a small area. The spiritual veins were buried one by one. Terraforming was under progress. When it was all done, it was already 10 days later. After everything was settled, Yi Shiwen and Wolf Cub would no longer stay in Yuan sect, but rushed back to the true martial domain directly. Now the true martial domain was still in turmoil. The situation was not alleviated despite 10 days having passed. On the contrary, the warfare became more intense. In just 10 days or so, Emergent School had accelerated the siege on True Martial School. The flames of war extended to many places, including the South region. Demon-worshipping religion, South barbarians, iron-armored horsemen. Both of them stirred up chaos everywhere. Yi Shiwen did not return to True Martial School. On the contrary, he chose to stay outside because he could not play a key role in the direct confrontation between True Martial School and Emergent School. In such a collision, only Transcendent Realm warriors had ways to protect themselves. Those who were not Transcendent Realm would be easily crushed into fragments in every battle. The situation was chaotic. On the third day, Yi Shiwen had already met with Star Beast Avatar who had rushed from True Martial School. Yi Shiwen still didn't want to expose his avatar. After all, Star Beast Avatar was his secret weapon. If he had the option, he would never expose it. Trump cards were the lost technique reserved for the critical moment. It could not be exposed until the last moment. Yi Shiwen had used Star Beast Avatar more than once. However, in reality, no one knew Yi Ziwen's trick. Deep in the South region, Yi Shiwen looked up to the direction of True Martial School. At a faraway place his gaze crossed upon, dark clouds covered the sky. In the depths of the 5 clouds, Emergent School masters crowded the area. There were multiple light rays under their feet. From a distance, it was like a formation of a dark cloud. The Tau soldiers of Emergent School were desperately attacking True Martial School. Various tyrannical characters appeared in it. On the True Martial School side, countless arrays were activated due to the invasion of Emergent School. Although the overall strength was much weaker than Emergent School, they did not suffer a lower ground with the defense of the arrays. Various distinguished figures were among them too. From time to time, the masters of Transcendent Realm confront each other either in the sky or in the universe. This large-scale warfare would shake its audience to the core. At this time, True Martial School embodied the deep background behind the supreme ruler of True Martial Domain. Innumerable arrays were launched. Divine lights were blasted out, penetrating heaven and earth. The horizon was brightly lit. Countless masters of Emergent School and Tau soldiers were penetrated by these divine light and turned into dust. True Martial School had passed the years of constant fighting for a long time. It had been many years that it had not experienced such a fight right at their front door. However, it did not mean that they had no ways to counterattack at all. Even the disciples of True Martial School grew stronger after many years of fighting. True Martial School displayed no weakness in their war. They were even better than the masters of Emergent School. Although Emergent School was the boss in Emergence Domain, which provided them a lot of talents and massive resources, the competition among them was much smaller. Their man count was superior than True Martial School. But their individual fighting power was unmatched to True Martial School. Since True Martial School decided to go all out, the order to hunt had commenced. Those who hunted any disciple of Emergent School would gain a lot of merit points. True Martial School merit points were not easily earned normally. Now that True Martial School granted open access to the treasury, anything was redeemable with enough merit points. Everyone gave all they had in the warfare. It was a life and death battle for everyone. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.